Hey, good evening from Brighton and good afternoon in the United States. Welcome to the Type 1 Radio Lounge. I'm Steve Gaddafi. I'm joined by my lovely wife,
Hello.
Back Chick, and Sonic. And tonight we're joined by the second of our Sync Book authors, Mr. Kyle Hunt. Good evening, Kyle.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, how are you doing?
Doing very well, thanks. How's it going over there?
Yes, it's all going well so far.
Warming up.
Warming up,
Yeah.
All right.
Spring is coming.
So the first question has to be, was that a professional footballer you used to be?
No, not professional.
Just college?
Yeah, I played a little in college and in high school, and I guess referring to the show I did during the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like watching that crap myself, so I put on my own show and discussed my own experiences with American football.
Yeah.
I actually left that to go play rugby in Scotland for St. Andrews, and that was way more fun, in my opinion.
Less protection though, no body armour.
Yeah, that's what was fun about it.
How long did you live in St. Andrews for then?
Just one semester. So I was over there in beginning of September, and then I left in December. And since it's so far up north there, the sun just really starts going down real early in the daytime when you're heading into the winter months there.
Yeah,
so.
in the summer it's reversed. It never gets dark.
Yeah, they were saying that they'd be partying on the beach until midnight, and it would still be light out.
So did you go to university in St. Andrews?
Yeah, I was there at the same time as Prince William there.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
'Cause that's a very esoteric college there, isn't it?
Oh yeah, a beautiful place too. Actually, he was at our rugby ball that year.
All right.
Yeah. So actually, we toasted to the Queen. I guess there's a classic toast there to the Queen, and her grandson was in the room as well. So
Wow.
Interesting environment.
You may have met my auntie. My auntie's the councillor for St. Andrews.
Huh.
Yeah.
Maybe hard to remember those times, to be honest.
Apparently, there's many a secret society was formed in St. Andrews also, like the Bilderbergers apparently had a bit of a thing there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot hidden there. The first golf course was there.
That's right.
And what most people don't even realize is the name of golf. It comes from the Gauls, the Celts, the Gaels.
Wow.
So golf, this international sport of business, really does take its origins from the Celtic game there. And a lot of what we understand about the world today is secreted, occulted, and the Scottish rite of Freemasonry probably has a pretty big influence upon at least what we've seen being created up until today. I'm not sure how strong they are today, but there's definitely a lot that was secreted to Scotland and has since come forth from there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, was it 1780 or they had to decree their membership? So that's when it went underground.
Yeah.
To be more
Well,
nefarious.
the oldest lodge is just outside of Edinburgh. There, just a hop, skip, and a jump from St. Andrews, really.
Yeah, Edinburgh, beautiful place. It's Arthur's seat, or Arthur? Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, right. Just standing right there above the city. Climbed up there myself. I took the trails up. Beautiful place, but most people don't realize. They think that Arthur was this great, English hero. He was a Celt by most accounts, who was fighting against the English. But it seems that he's still portrayed in most of the media over there as a great English hero.
Yeah.
And I guess there's also a statue of Queen Boudica over there as well, right? Somewhere in London. So it's interesting how these things were all incorporated. Of course, not exactly, I guess, the conversation we were planning to get into today, but I'm sure it all does relate in so many ways because, well, this is where English was originating, and that was really what I was writing about in the Sync book. So, you know, everything that went into the formation of this language includes the peoples, you know, who were conquered by the different empires and brought into the fold. And I've really seen a lot of these different cultures, their philosophies, their symbols, kind of represented or amalgamated, or you know, it might be like you know, in alchemy when different, well, if you melt things up together, right, you can combine different elements into one thing, and I think that's something along the lines of what happened, especially with English.
Well, I was just about to say about the John Dee and Francis Bacon sort of influences. You know, the way they sort of constructed the English language to be more mathematically perfect sort of thing. In your passage sort of thing. Which leads me to when we had Alan Abadasso on, I gave him my synchronicities, which happened when I read his passage, and when I read your passage, I was looking at the what's it called, the gematria that you're on about, giving the numbers to the letters, and I've looked at other forms of like numerology, and I was saying to my wife how, you know, this is another sort of thing that I hadn't heard of, and she said, "Oh, I've got a book about that by Nigel Pennick," and then lo and behold, you mention him like straight after that. So there you go. But the book I've got is the Oracle of Geomancy, and the one you mentioned is the Magical Alphabets.
Right.
But that's a synchronicity in itself. So
yeah, definitely.
Amazing.
Well, do you want me just to give a brief rundown of what gematria is?
Yeah, please do.
Examples here. So what I think is really powerful is what's called simple English gematria, which is basically just you line up the letters of the alphabet with their numerical correspondences 1 through 26. So ABC is 1, 2, 3, and there's also what's known as just regular English gematria, and it's a different numbering system. So each of these letters has a different numerical value, and that holds a lot of different meaning as well. And a lot of people will know about Jewish gematria, which was basically brought forth in the movie Pi by Darren Aronofsky. Not brought forth, but brought to public attention. And we're often not told just how meaningful it is when we add up different words with simple English gematria. As I said, ABC 1, 2, 3. For example, when you add up the word God, G-O-D, because G is 7, O is 15, and D is 4, you add them up to a value of 26. You know, we have 26 letters in the alphabet. It's half the number of weeks in a year. The precession of the equinoxes takes almost about 26,000 years. And, of course, it's also the 26th element is iron, which is a very important element, Fe. And a couple other words you get when you add up, or when you kind of break down 26. So you see that God equals 26, then you want to know what other words have this value. A couple other ones would be game or flag. And you can see how games and flags are also worshipped like gods. And when you see the rainbow alphabet, you see it is something of a flag, and it kind of looks like a game because it's a target. And I do think this is something of a capture the flag type game I'm playing here. Now, there are some other big numbers that hold a lot of significance. You could look into any number and find meaning and different correlations. 26 is one of those big keys, and that's why there are 26 letters in the alphabet, I believe. But the way you form the rainbow alphabet itself is when you understand that 26 is so key, you want to know what other pairings will equal to 26. So what I saw was, after checking out Dennis Feccio of the Illuminatus Observer, one of his posts, and he had put the alphabet in a 5x5 matrix, taking away the Z at the end. And I saw right in the middle there is the M. So M in the middle, of course. Now, if you have two of these together, 13 plus 13, it's 26. And so when I saw this, I saw, okay, M is in the middle, and if you have two of it, it equals the whole, the Z. Yeah. And amazing, MZ. It's something of a maze, right? And now, what you then do, or what I did, was I took one letter to the left and one letter to the right. So then you have L, which is 12, and N, which is 14. Both of those add up to 26. And I saw you can keep going. And so I started arcing the different pairings across, and I said, wow, this is looking like something pretty legitimate. And so, you know, I can give the rundown, but then I colored it, and I can get into the colorations too. But I do think that somehow I stumbled upon the correct configuration of how the English alphabet is esoterically coding for a whole number of things that we see in our society around us. And yeah, 26, as I said, very important number. But there is something of a complement to this number. Before I get into the rainbow alphabet pairings, the complement I see would be 74. Now, 26 plus 74 equals 100. So it's acting as something of the lock and key right there is what I see. 74 actually is the value of the lock, the key, things like Jesus, Lucifer, Muhammad, anyone. Now, this process is known as simple English gematria, right? Simple equals 74. English equals 74. Gematria equals 74. London equals 74.
And London's got LN as well, hasn't it?
Excuse me?
London's got an L at the start and an N at the end. The LN.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Now, I can't say exactly what this all means, but when you understand that if you break down this 74 further, 7 is G and 4 is D. So you have GD, God. This is how Jews will sometimes write out the name of God, G/D. And it's also, you know, we have 7 days in a week, 4 weeks in a month. Well, that's if you have a 13-month system, which I actually think we should, but still roughly 4 weeks in a month. So, again, that's 7/4. There's so much that could be seen there. But I do think that, especially because we're dealing with the rainbow alphabet, just bringing up that Lucifer, Jesus, Muhammad, these things all equal to 74 is kind of interesting, and then this is complementing to the 26 that we were seeing before, because they're equaling the 100%. If you'd like, I can go through you know, each one of these the different pairings real quickly, and maybe you guys can add in some things that I didn't catch in the book.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
All right, so at the top, in red, and if anybody who's listening out there would like to check this out, maybe somebody in the chat room can paste the diagram, but over at startheory.wordpress.com, I have one of my diagrams of the rainbow alphabet. It actually has a division in there as well, you'll see.
Yeah,
so
we've
got
got the
full
distinct
thing.
one, and it's in black and white, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's not nearly as impressive when it's in black and white, but hopefully you still get the idea. So at the top of this is the I, A and Y.
Yep.
And of course this refers to oneself, I,
right,
and also as an affirmation, I, Captain, right? And the I is at the top in red, and Hal is the red eye in Kubrick's 2001. There's a lot of references to the red eye that you can find out there. A whole lot. There's even a Stephen Marley song called In a D Red, where he's singing about red eye, you're going to turn blue. And so then we get one level down here, in the orange, we have BX. Now, this could... It seems like box. I'd say box, maybe even bucks, as in, you know, what we're hunting out there for bucks and doe in terms of money, and also once upon a time deer. And then in this box, we're boxed in all the time, in cubicles, in houses, in cars, all these boxy things. It usually, I think, will represent the female, right? The box, and Pandora's box, and things like this, the voice box. And so within these boxes, I'm going to use a little gateway here to the next one. I don't know if over there you had gateway computers. Did you?
Yeah, we know.
Okay, so they would get mailed out. The big thing that Gateway was known for is that you wouldn't go to the store to pick them up. You basically customize them online, and then they get sent to you in their big cow box, right? Okay. They have a cow print on it. And so then the next one down we have is the CW pairing in gold. And so it does seem to be the golden cow. Cows have been worshipped and slaughtered over the ages by various cultures. You know, this is what we're talking about here is a symbol. So you know, symbol. There's also the Bible. I'm getting a little feedback here.
I don't know where that echoes come from.
I'm not sure.
Have you got the radio page open now?
No, I've got headphones on too. It might be on your end. We could try reconnecting if that might help.
All right.
All right. Well, I can keep going. Hopefully, we can get the issue resolved.
Hey, was that it? No. Keep going, Kyle. Keep going, please.
All right. So yeah, the golden cow, obviously a very loaded symbol, right? The Bible contains 2 books. Both of them are somewhat bull unless you know what you're reading. And they're full of paradoxes, you know, paradox, a parable. The Pope issues papal bulls as well, spelled like that. And there's a whole lot more you can get into here. There's actually somebody out there with a whole video series about the bull gods. The next one down would be DV in green. Oh, the echo's gone. Great.
Yeah.
I could see this as a dove, maybe, which is another one of those religious symbols. Perhaps Dave. And going to get into this a little bit, but you can circle all these pairings because of the way that the rainbow diagram is working. You can loop them around, so loop letters onto back around to each other. So DV. You could bring that D back around, so DVD would be what you are encoding sound and light information onto. Going back up there, you know, you have Aya at the top, like ayahuasca. You've got you can have XBX, like Xbox, the famous gaming system. Another one down, the CW, you can have WCW, which is the wrestling in that squared circle. At least, I'm not sure if you guys get that trash over there, but
unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, the WCW even had the NWO in it as well.
Yeah.
And so right below DV we have.
You missed a good WC one out, the water closet.
Oh yeah, well we don't think about it as the water closet over here, so wouldn't even know. There's a whole lot. There's a CW network over here that does television.
Country and Western music.
No, it's just a bunch of kind of like pop garbage. Right. They actually have a show called Vampire Diaries on the CW. So one of their advertisements was catch VD on the CW. Catch VD on the CW. So they were highlighting the Rainbow Alphabet pairings, and well, if you know what VD is, it's venereal disease. And that's what they're basically telling you right there. One more down, we have the EU in blue.
Now, this is interesting. This is very interesting.
So the European Union is blue. That's what the main color is. Yeah. Now, Europa was stolen by Zeus when he dressed up as a bull.
A bull.
Yes. Now, you know what blue cheese is, right? Spelled B-L-E-U, blue cheese.
Yeah.
It's probably more popular over here with the really fat Americans who like to dip all their wings in it and everything. They're buffalo wings. Yeah, and so again, relating us to that cow, and it's really everywhere. But EU in general means good, like a eulogy means good words.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another one of those somewhat universal pairings there that, you know, the original intent might not have been a bad one with what this was, but that basically it was used as something of a blueprint, perhaps. It's really hard to say. In any event, it does all seem to fit. The next one down would be FT, which is...
Financial Times?
Yeah, sure. Financial Times. It could be
Full time.
fat. You know, the cow gets fat.
Yeah.
Fate. You know, I'd like to think that these things are really up to interpretation. What I find interesting about this pairing as well is that the T and the F are very similar. If you take this that second little line in the F and put it up on top, what I'm saying is that it becomes a T.
Mm-hmm.
So that they have the same kind of basic components and structure, I guess, is what I'm getting to there.
Yeah.
It also, what I could think of is full time, which is, you know, what people are expected to work when they've got when they're a productive member of society. Next one down, GS. Your best guess here. There's so much that could be put in here, but this is the first time that the rainbow actually kind of loops back on itself.
Yeah.
So
again,
yeah, it's a double rainbow. I think this is a valid interpretation. One of the reasons I'm going to say this is that when you combine the red bands of the rainbow alphabet, you have AY and GS. Now, the only real English word you can spell with this is gaze.
Yay!
Right? That's a kind of crazy. And what do they use as their symbol for pride?
it's a rainbow.
A six-banded rainbow, not a seven-banded, a six-banded, which is what the rainbow alphabet actually is.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take a look at a word like vision, and so you're taking in the light of the different colors of the rainbow through your eyes and through the iris. The iris was actually the goddess of rainbows. So that kind of tells you right there. But the word vision, it says VI, Scion. Mm-hmm. VI is 6 in Roman numerals, and then Scion. So what this is encoding, in my opinion, is the number of colors that are in the spectrum that you're taking in. Another way to validate this, at least in my mind or in the popular culture, is you look at Tom Clancy's video game out in the Xbox called Rainbow Six.
Rainbow Six, yeah.
Rainbow Six, right? Okay, so we're at the GS. It could be gas. Maybe we're dealing with gas giants. Maybe a bit of Jupiter, a bit of Saturn. I don't know. Saturn has the rings, so does Jupiter. The Lord of the Rings. It could be who crafted this.
Mm-hmm.
The next one down is HR, and we're back to orange. And now, if we combine the two orange bands thus far, it says her box, or box her. So, kind of interesting. HR is human resources to most people.
Yeah.
I could also see it as maybe Hera, or who would be the mother of the Olympians.
Yeah.
No,
Royal Highness.
Royal Highness is what I was...
Yeah, I'm sorry. She's the wife of Zeus. Her mother, which is an anagram of her own name, Rhea, was the mother.
Yeah.
And
Same
HRIRH is like a seed syllable in Tibetan Sanskrit when they're doing the mantras to sort of contain all the karma there, to like it's like a sealed spell almost.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So the next one down would be IQ, in gold. And to some alchemists, this is what the gold of the alchemical process is all about, is to gain intelligence.
Yeah, yeah.
Because as much base stuff that we can acquire around us, that can all be stolen from us. It can be lost. It can deteriorate. It can rust. But if you're to develop the gold on the inside, let's say, perhaps you can even take that with you into the next realms. So IQ. After that, we have JP. Immediately, I might think of J.P. Morgan, which would be somewhat relevant. In the United States and around the world, Jeep is pretty popular as a brand of car.
Yeah.
There's also... Excuse me?
A Justice of the Peace? Judge?
Oh, yeah, there you go. There's also Jurassic Park as well. The next one in, we have KO. So in boxing, if somebody gets knocked out, it's a knockout, a KO. There's a whole lot that can be seen from these things, not only from what the pairings are saying themselves, but also how they're connecting to each other. For example, after the KO, we have the LN. If you combine these two together, it says colon. And then right after the colon is the absolute kind of the center. So this could be possibly something of well, if you think of the human Stargate, things come from one side, through our mouth, through our eyes, through our ears, and well, we excrete some things from the other end. So
sometimes known as a chocolate starfish.
Yeah, and this is also seen as something of the toroid, and this is what we're dealing with right here, is like the toroid diagram. And okay, so the LN, I see it as line or lion, and then we're going through the lion's gate to get to the M in the middle, and I say it's an M in the middle, but I see it as the M in the M. It has, it's doubled. Like these other things are combining with other letters to become that 26, and M is combining with it itself. And you have M&Ms, the chocolate candies. You've got Marilyn Monroe. You've got Mary Magdalene. You've got Minnie Mouse and Mickey Mouse. A couple of M&Ms as well. And so that's you can go all over and find M&Ms as well.
The year 2000 was MM, wasn't it, in Roman numerals?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Going back out the other side here, it's a little bit quicker, but still kind of loaded. The NL. Oh, first, before going on, the M in the middle. Let's think about that for a second. We're dealing with rainbows. In the alchemical story of The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy, the dot, and you need, if you connect two dots, you get a line, like I was saying with the LN. Okay, but Dorothy is the dot, let's say. That's another name for Dorothy. In any event, she goes over the rainbow, and she goes to the Emerald City, which is right there in the middle. Now, the word emerald, even though it has an E before it, it's pretty much saying emerald. And she's trying to get back to Auntie M.
Yeah.
I do think it's also referencing the Emerald Isle as well, as something of kind of where things might have originated, or possibly this. It could have been. It's hard to say. In any event,
you've got the little people as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
In Ireland, and also the.
Well, you got the Irish giants, and then the little people as well.
Leprechaun.
And so to the Irish giants, you could have had everybody as little people.
Rainbow.
There you go.
Okay, so actually looking at the middle here is where some interesting things can happen as well. So you have LMN right there in the middle. So The Wizard of Oz was written by Lyman Frank Baum. So LMN and then the YA of Yah added in to form Lyman Frank Baum. So I think it could have been a coded name, to be honest.
Yeah.
And yeah, coded with a big KO. So I'll continue on the rainbow diagram here. Going downward, you have NL, neurolinguistic possibly. It could also be seen as Nile or nil, meaning, none.
None, yeah.
And then coming out from there, we have OK, which is another kind of affirmative symbol, OK. And then there's the hand sign, which is loaded with a bunch of symbolism as well. PJ, I think of pajamas.
Peanut butter jelly.
Yeah, right.
It's my favorite.
and then back in gold here we have the QI, and QI is key to the I believe it'd be the Chinese who see it this way.
Yeah.
It can be spelled in a number of ways, but QI is definitely life force. It's key.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a show on over here called QI.
Quite interesting.
Quite interesting, yeah.
I found that, yeah. Never saw it, but they use a concentric circle type
That's
logo.
right, in the
Yeah,
background.
yeah.
They have
But it's interesting when the sort of the camera's on Stephen Fry, that his head and the circles going out from his head look like the menorah, the Jewish sort of candle holder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, if you take off the top half of the rainbow alphabet, so you have just the bottom, it does form something of a menorah there.
Yeah.
Dennis Beccio had done a great breakdown. He only has a few videos out there, but one of them actually shows how the menorah was taken from kind of a coded construction around pi, the letters, the numbers of pi as it's going out there. Really, really interesting stuff how this all ties together, especially when you look at his work as well. The next one going down here after QI is RH. Again, I had mentioned Rhea before, but RH plus EA is Rhea, and RH is also a very important blood indicator. RH negative people, probably some, could be considered some of the more powerful people, but also some of the more demonized as well.
Yeah.
They're very interesting, RH negative people, in that just they can't have babies with certain other people who aren't RH negative in certain instances. I don't know the exactness here.
There's a group, Friends of Freeman, on the Friendship Agenda, about rhesus negative. I think there's quite a lot of rhesus negative people on, but
I think Jamie and Freeman are both.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people who are somewhat like-minded with myself who are RH negative as well. I don't know about myself, but I would guess just by looking at the indications that I might be. Redheaded people are often RH negative. Oh yeah, redheaded. RH, redhead.
There you go.
There you go. The next one down is SG. Now
That's Steve Gaddafi.
Oh, there you go. Stargate, SG, SG1, Stargate. And that's what we're dealing with here, I think, is something of a Stargate.
There's an interesting thing. There's a guitar called an SG. Are you aware of this? That Gibson make.
No.
And basically, the cut-out part that you put your hands to get to the higher frets. Well, there's two of those which form devil's horns. And if you turn it upside down, it's like the phallus going into the vagina.
Okay.
That's an SG, basically.
Well, I see it also as maybe sage. You add a couple of vowels in there, sage.
Yeah.
Next down we have TF, tough maybe. I don't. There is actually a college nearby me called Tufts, TF, TUFT, Tufts.
Or truth frequency.
Oh yeah, there you go. Interesting. Down from here we have UE again. This relates to the European Union. It's also seen as UE to a lot of people.
United Emirates.
Oh yeah, right.
You point out it's United States as well, don't you? That's what the Spanish call the United States, isn't it?
Yeah, Los Estados Unidos, so EU.
Yeah.
Is, Los Estados Unidos.
And in French, it's États Unis.
Yeah.
So
you put an H in front of that. It's hue, and hue relating to color.
Color, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not an expert on what these pairings could represent. I love getting all of your input because there are just some things that I'm not aware of because I'm not even I'm not really in the kind of as much of the nexus of where this originated as you all are, being in that culture. Because we might speak English, but it's we have so many different kind of cultural and different things that kind of separate us apart from each other. Besides the oceans, so it is definitely great getting that kind of input. Next one down would be VD.
Over there.
Sorry, what's that?
I said you lot have gone on a bit of a tangent over there.
Yeah. The VD down here, again, a venereal disease, could be a number of things. Video. Alexander the Large has a good quote about how colors are only really seem real when they're vidied on the screen in A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
Down from here we have WC. Could be like Wick, possibly. Again, what was that one?
Wait.
Yeah.
Or
yeah. Could
Wicked.
possibly relating to Wicca as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Next one down would be XB.
XB1, the fighter jet, isn't it?
Huh.
Yeah. Well, Xbox is the obvious one, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Microsoft, there you go.
Right. The next one down, the one that kind of finishes off at the bottom, would be the Yah.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't mention before that in Hebrew, the Yud-He-Vah-He, YHVH, which is supposed to represent God,
Right, yeah.
actually you add that up in Hebrew, I believe, if I get this right, yeah, the Y is 10, the H is 5, the V is 6, and then the H is 5 again. So that adds up to 26. So down there at the bottom is Yah. Now, does anybody know a little bit of Russian? In Russian, Yah means I. It means like myself, right? I.
Yeah.
So
We actually do have a Russian speaker with us.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So it seems to be something of a key for a number of languages besides just English as well. So maybe they're using these they were using base components that maybe trying to reconstruct something of a Tower of Babel as well. Not sure. But that being down there at the bottom, the way I see it is since we have Ma'at in Egyptian mythology, who is supposed to weigh the soul against a feather.
Mm-hmm.
I see this down there at the bottom, Yahweh. Well, could it possibly be that since Ma'at is in the underworld at the very bottom, weighing things, we could possibly associate that with Yah weighing things at the bottom as well?
There we go.
I was liking it. Well, if we think of this as a cow, since it's all really the bull's eye, it could be spelled, way as in W-H-E-Y, the product from a cow, the Yahweh.
Oh, yeah.
Now, in the diagram I have up there, there's also a further division. I don't get into the division in the sync book because I hadn't yet seen it, but that would probably require a whole bunch more time too, because that one really, you start to cross-correlate between the two. And so basically what that's doing is just, taking each one of these sections on the right and the left of the M, and then applying the same kind of circle geometry to them to get more pairings. And I've actually gone one step further down from this. And it's quite interesting. QI.
QI and HP and oh my goodness. So
I can
R,
see that.
H and R as well again.
Yeah.
Well, you've got so in the further division, you know, if you don't mind, I'll just real quickly run through a couple of these things that are pretty significant. I think you have the D and the I together for ID or DI die.
Yeah.
So like Lady Di, right, and then across that you have the QV, which is associated with it. You know, I see here something that's kind of like a Queen V type of thing, but we'll jump to the right column. You know, I'm all over the place here. The right column, you have New York, and then Ox, NY Ox. Now in New York, you have that famous bull, right? And what happens when iron is oxidized? It rusts.
Yeah.
And right there on the right column, if you're going down into the middle, it says RU and then ST, rust. And the original city of mankind was and that's obviously another pairing there in this rainbow dye vision as well, is you know, as I was saying, if you cross-correlate these things, let's say, at the top of this division is Al and NY, and the capital of New York is Al-Ba-Ni. So you're just missing that ba in the middle. You have BK in the left column, associated with the OX in the right, and Burger King, BK, serves up lots of oxen. Okay. Next one down here, CJ and PW. CJ could also be JC if you loop it down the bottom, like Jesus Christ, James Cameron, John Carpenter, and
Jim Carrey.
Yeah, Jennifer Connelly. A lot of people have this combination. A lot of sync work has gone into that. But JC is worshipped in pews, PWs. Now, sometimes I felt like a prisoner of war, POW, when I was in the pews, but
me too. Yeah.
That's another story.
Yeah.
Okay, if you take this idea that maybe it's a map for what was going on in the United States as well. You have at the upper left-hand part of the United States is Alaska, which is something of a mixed-up version of Al-Aqsa, if you're aware of what that is. But down the lower left, we would have Los Angeles, and the upper right would be New York, and I'm not sure what's down there in the YN. Maybe it was the Indians in Florida. Hard to say. But, you know, people sign off with an XO, and that's one of the last pairings of the Rainbow Division. Would be an XO, like hugs and kisses.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, it really... What are your thoughts? After seeing this, you know, all put out there, what do you guys think this is all about? Because I'm just one person who came across it. I don't have the answers as to what's going on here.
Me either, but it's totally fascinating. I mean, I've read it about 3 or 4 times now, and like I was saying earlier, you just keep getting your own little. You start seeing your own little things in it, don't you?
Well, I've seen some things that seem only, you know, kind of intended for me almost in these things as well. I was writing as Ferdinand the Bull long before I found the Rainbow Alphabet, which just seems to be all containing bull symbolism and things like that.
What was it? Was it 2 posts ago on your blog that you were on about all the bulls with the New York Bulls and stuff like that? No, it was the one previous to the one you've just done, isn't it? One with the redheads in it.
Oh, maybe. Well, I've talked about the Super Bowl. I've talked about bulls many times, to be honest. I've, you know, even back into the archives before I was getting into this.
Yeah. Well, you certainly mentioned on your Red Ice interview that your mum referred to you as, or was it your mum that referred to you as the bull in the China shop?
Well, you know what's interesting? Ferdinand the Bull. Ferd, I, Nand. So we break apart that word, Ferd, and then I, Nand. I, Nand, if you just take that and you put Nand and then the I, it says Nandi. And Nandi was the mount of Shiva. It was the bull of Shiva. So Ferdinand the Bull also seems to kind of code for Ferdinandi, and just how kind of Pan, the goat god, was kind of turned into bread. You know, Jesus, my body is bread. You know, Pan means bread. P-A-N or panini. You know. In the same way, in India, which is actually just an anagram, India, of Nandi, I Nandi. If you pray I Nandi, that would be an anagram of Indian.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in India, bread is naan.
Naan, yeah. Oh, God.
N-A-N. This relates to, you know, Inanna, the cow goddess, and a whole bunch of things that can be seen in our current culture with the naming of different celebrities and things as well.
Well, over here, you call your grandmother Nana.
Yeah. And if somebody is taking care of you who's not your parent, it's often called a nanny.
Yeah. It's also interesting that there's 26 authors in your book, in the symbol.
Well, there was originally going to be 22, and then there were a few more added. And I'm not saying that Alan didn't, you know, possibly just cap it at 26 and say, all right, it sinks, we're gonna go with it. But what's interesting about the original 22 number would be that's the number of letters in the Hebrew alphabet, and then the 26 being kind of the other. I see actually the languages and their alphabets working between each other, not always in conflict with each other, but there's so many interesting correlations that happen when you look between them. For example, in say we're not going to just use simple English gematria, we're going to use English gematria, which is a different numbering system. You add up New York as a word, you know, New York, that equals 666 in English gematria. You can go to GE Matrix, so gematrix.org, to look up these kinds of things for yourself. But the people who were crafting the different names seem to have known what the numerical values were in a number of different coding systems and kind of planned accordingly.
Well, New York's name was changed, wasn't it, from New Amsterdam?
Correct.
For possibly that reason, then?
Possibly. It could also have been changing hands from the Dutch to the British. You know, so you know what? I also see that the reason that certain names have multiple spellings is to fit into multiple different kinds of systems of encoding. So Muhammad, right? You're never going to see that spelled the same way. Or there's so many different kinds of spelling. Perhaps that's because you know, it has to add up to different things in different coding systems. Or Jesus, why is it spelled the way it's spelled? When the Greek is, you know, it starts with an I. Well, that's one of the reasons that J and U didn't even exist as letters for a long time. In the United States, we can still see on buildings in different places, instead of justice being in you know, on the building, J-U, stis, it will be ivstis, I-V-S-T, ice. Which is an interesting change there. It seems like it could also be relating to the Battle of the Olympians, let's say, and the Ju of Jupiter take over.
Okay.
Sorry, Kyle, can't continue. We've brought Thomas in. Please, Kyle.
What I was just saying there was that the J and the U were something of new additions to the alphabet, and so in some justice buildings in the United States, even you still see the old spelling of I-V-S-T-I-C-E instead of justice, and I do think that this relates possibly to you know, something of that Olympian type war where Jupiter has taken over as Zeus, which would be another kind of you know, representing the Z or the zenith, perhaps. You know, people are talking worshiping Jesus, so
no, I've heard that. Jesus and Julius Caesar and all this.
It's
Yeah.
interesting as well, Carl, that you were saying that you've stumbled upon this and it's kind of almost synchronistically come to help you with the way that you study. I think that a lot of times that within synchronistic realms, these things do just kind of manifest themselves as tools for yourself to work with, but also you can show others, well, look, this worked for me, and then other people can kind of pick up on it and use it as well. But I almost think that, like in the sync work, you're actually following a path of your own divination. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do think so. It's hard for me sometimes to know what was already out there, and that I'm just kind of seeing it, and how much of it is I'm almost creating things as well. I actually, in this instance, with the Rainbow Alphabet, I think it was something that was guiding me towards that solution, and I do feel like it is something of a correct solution. That doesn't mean that there can't be multiple interpretations upon it, that it couldn't be colored and divided and combined in so many different ways that could be just as equally valid.
Yeah.
For example, Dennis Fecio's Isisian codes, he folds the alphabet in a kind of a different way that makes complete sense for what he's talking about there with his framework. So it's really interesting. Just how many different approaches there can be to the same kind of base material.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you think that the English language has been designed specifically with mathematics in mind, like sacred geometry?
Yes.
Or do you think that it's just naturally developed? It's maybe like the planet as an entity, Sophia, becoming like sort of like in the Tower of Babylon, where Tower of Babel, where it's sort of everyone got their own language to divide people. That English may be spontaneously evolving to unite the planet again.
That's interesting. I think that it definitely encodes sacred geometry. Sacred, if you break that word apart, it's sacred, and so everything is contained within that hallowed red eye.
The red blood cell.
Yeah. But or possibly the placenta from which the world is not placenta, the uterus, the red sac from which the world is born. It could also be the red covering of your own eyeball. Your eyeball sitting within this kind of red sac. That most of it's. Well, let me get back to your question here. The way I see it is that certain people have been aware of these different codes, have been working with them. That doesn't mean that they've not been possibly divinely or even demonically inspired to come to these solutions. I think that possibly that this could have been encoded for a good purpose. It could have been something of a plan to liberate people through language, as you were saying, but it could always have been hijacked.
I think it was hijacked.
Then kept secret. And when it's kept secret, it's so much more powerful. Once you see things for a more kind of in a more honest or realistic way, once you see the codes being broken down, they don't have the same kind of power or influence over you, especially not in the marketing sense of the way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sense of the word.
In the sense of the synchronism as a whole, is maybe the formation of the English language almost the universe bringing it into being to for some purpose?
Possibly. I think that I think I might have been used by some forces to bring this forward, because possibly I was the I could have been the only one looking into the proper places to have been thinking about this kind of material in order to bring it forth for some particular reason, which I'm not really sure of. I don't think it's a bad one, but when I see the complexity and kind of also the simplicity and the beauty of how it works, it's hard to say that yes, this was all just crafted by people, because it seems far too complex and almost in some ways perfected. An example of this is if you were to actually make the box, in the Xbox circle. I have a diagram where I've done this. It's if you just search Google image search Rainbow Logic, people should be able to find it, and I'll post it as well. But if you connect the you make a six-sided box, a hexagon in that the orange BX. So the nodes, the 6 points of that hexagon are in the BX circle there, and then within that, you then create, how within that you can form the Star of David, which is a 6-pointed star. What's really interesting is that when you form those points, basically the BX is encapsulating the Star of David, perfectly, so that the Xbox is what is containing the Star of DVD, and then you further can look into the middle.
Wasn't Microsoft some sort of deity? I remember hearing there was some sort of god called Microsoft, or it might have been in some writing, some like witchcraft.
Microsoft came from William Gibbons, didn't it? Neuromancer.
Right.
Huh. Well, he definitely coined the term cyberspace, and
yeah, he did. Yeah.
If the cyberspace wasn't around, none of this would have been able to come to light. I mean, light technology is really what has enabled so much of this to happen.
Well, that's why I'm out of the mind that all this and us connecting, all around the world is like a type of awakening, that we all sort of realise that we're all just one big thing just travelling through space.
Well, can we just hang on for a second, because this conversation is absolutely fascinating and time is just running away with us. So we want to just play a quick song, and then we're going to bring Thomas Sheridan in. So Kyle, can you please stay with us?
Oh, sure, definitely.
Brilliant. Right, we're going to have a quick song, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes.
Thank you, Talking Head. And now we've got another great guest coming on, and it's Thomas Sheridan, who's speaking to us all the way from the Emerald Isle itself in Ireland. How are things over there, Thomas?
Oh, pretty good, thanks. Glad to be here. Nice day today. Just chilling on a Saturday evening.
Yeah, lovely. I was just in the break there. I was just saying to Steve, what a great conversation to be having. It was Saturday, well, it's evening here. I know it's more like early afternoon in America, but I couldn't want for a better evening to be chatting with
Kyle's
the folks
brilliant.
in the Type 1 Lounge.
Yeah. Welcome to the Type 1 Lounge, Thomas. This is Sonic. I'm another Brightonian.
Thank you very much for having me on.
And
Kyle.
I just wanted to say, for the benefit of anyone who hasn't heard of your work, that Thomas talks about the psychopathic virus that seems to manifest itself within people these days. And that's what you talk about, isn't it, Thomas?
Well, amongst other things, mainly I became known for writing a book called Puzzling People, Labyrinth, the Psychopath, which did very well and got me a lot of attention. And it was basically my lifelong journey to try and come to terms with nature of evil, but in a pragmatic and, believable and rational way as best I could.
Yeah.
Excuse me. In the past, I wanted to know what was the real meaning to the allegories of things like demons, vampires, and even fairy tales to a certain extent. All through history, we have this motif of the human being who's not quite one of us, who seems rather predatory. And when you look at these things, such as fairy tales, even stepmothers and so on, Rapunzel, they're all a primitive form of psychology in a pre-scientific age, which basically was used to convey the notion that 4% of the human population, this is the official figures now, are not like the rest of us. They're what was traditionally called psychopathic. The term psychopathic means was first coined about 100 years ago. It basically means an attack upon the mind or an attack upon the soul if you go from Greek psyche. It was given its official terminology in the 1940s by an American psychiatrist called Harvey. He wrote a phenomenal book called The Mask of Sanity, in which he classified the disorder as being people who have a sensitivity towards anyone's emotions, their own emotions, as well as an impulsive desire to do whatever they want and do whatever it takes to get it. So even though some play therapy can be psycho the talking heads, really is not what the issue is about. The overwhelming majority are non-violent. They're psychologically violent. They're emotionally sadistic, but they're very, very, very rarely are they killers unless they do become serial killers. And these don't do, but a tiny number. Or they become politicians and end like starting wars. But basically, a psychopath has absolutely no conscience. Sense of emotions and sort of other people's feelings, low levels of sensitivity for other people's suffering, and are so impulsive and so they'll do absolutely whatever it takes to get at normal psychological manipulation of others.
I was just thinking that I was just thinking of the lyrics of that song, and it said, you start a conversation, you can't even finish.
The Type 1 Radio Lounge, we had some technical issues there, but hopefully we're back on the air without a crackling signal. So welcome back, Thomas.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I was in the middle of making a point to you, Thomas, about the fact that I saw David Cameron the other day, and he was in a hospital, and he had his sleeves rolled up, and he was in his kind of working man's look, kind of, you know, I'm with the working people of this country, and I'm getting down and dirty with the working people of this country. And like I say, it's just these personas that they kind of cloak themselves in. And,
yes, yeah.
You know, the next kind of PR stunt will be he's in another outfit that is suitable to the, appropriate to the venue that he's at next, whether it be, something to do with the Olympic Games where he'll be, maybe sporty or official or something.
Yes, and they so lack any kind of inner sense of introspection that they have no idea how absurd they look to others.
Yeah.
They don't realize that people are laughing at them. Cameron, before he was Prime Minister, when he was just leading the Tories and Gordon Brown was in, I remember seeing a video of it, and it was during when the whole Greenie thing, they were trying to push that, and they showed him cycling to the House of the Commons on his little bicycle, and it turned out later that he'd been driven to a nearby park, took the bike out of the back of the 4x4 and cycled the last mile for the TV cameras, and everyone laughed at these fools. And it's not yours, it's your politicians, it's all of them. And they're so divorced from any kind of. I don't know if Cameron is a psychopath. I don't think he is. I think he's like Obama. He's just an actor. Tony Blair was absolutely a psychopath.
Completely, yeah.
And so was George Bush. But he was. So Cameron is more of like a reflection of the kind of psychopathology, which would be sort of like a secondary or a proto-psychopathology is brought about by things like spin doctors and public relations, going right back to Edward Bernays at the turn of the century, who invented things like propaganda, marketing, and public relations. And they become so divorced from reality that even the system that they're in is so psychopathic that it no longer relates to anybody.
Mm. Yeah, and I think often, like you say, you don't think Cameron may be quite completely immersed in a psychopathic nature, but it only takes the people around him and his PR people to be of this way, that they know exactly how to manipulate the moment, how to manipulate him in the way that is necessary.
Yes, well, if you have no compassion and you have no sense of humanity in terms of, understanding your sort of self-realization as a human being on this earth, and you see yourself purely as a pernicious predator who sees everybody and everything else as a target, you are ideal for the current system we have, this sort of Babylon system, this psychopathic control grid that we now function under. We have a situation where the pyramid is basically designed, and it has been for a very long time, so the psychopathic individual floats to the top. You have groups like Common Purpose, which are now making really serious inroads into many European countries, not just the UK. And they talk about finding future leaders through their workshops and training modules. What they're really doing is looking for the psychopaths. It all comes back to the Fabian Society, which was a psychopathic operation was set up in the turn of the last century, and it was basically the same thing: to find the psychopaths, put them to the top of society, and dehumanize the society while humanizing the monster.
Yeah.
Isn't Cameron part of the Fabian Society?
Sorry?
Isn't
David Cameron part of the Fabian Society?
I don't know if he is, but Tony Blair absolutely was. I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be surprised if he wasn't.
And David and Ed Millerman, they definitely are.
Yeah. No, they're all, well, it all goes back to the London School of Economics in modern times, where they have the same idea. Milgram, he's the spawn of that particular institution. Same idea: get the most ruthless, the most cold, and the most easy to manipulate in terms of they'll do anything it takes for these globalist organizations to keep in power, and they will follow it.
Yeah. It sounds like Peter Mandelson.
Like who?
Peter Mandelson.
Oh, Mandelson, he slithers from one room to the next. I wouldn't even ask him for the time of day.
No. Dodgy guy. Yeah, he's just got a dark presence about him, hasn't he?
Yeah, and also many psychopaths are asexual, so you're not quite sure if they're gay or straight, and he definitely has that about him.
Yeah. Androgynous.
Yeah, there's a certain androgyny there that's within them. That's why many psychopathic males switch constantly through their lives between being gay and straight. It's not that they're actually gay or they're actually straight. It's just that they will jump into whatever scene they think will give them the most power.
Yeah.
Say something.
Yeah. You've blown us away with that one.
Yeah.
It's funny because Mandelson has kind of slithered into the background again because in this country, I mean, he went over to the EU, didn't he, and had he got kicked out of politics in this country, went to the EU, took one of the most powerful positions there, then came back and as a non-elected.
He made a board though, wasn't he?
Oh yeah,
it's started influencing the government again.
Yeah, it's just a big revolving door of moving these creatures from one, either it's not always politics. They'll move from politics to media, and media back to politics, big business, and it's the top of it's not the top of the pyramid, but it's like the 3/4 near the top of the pyramid, and now all the psychopaths, the powerful psychopaths, do this sort of like musical chairs. The ultimate thing is to keep anyone with any kind of morality or integrity out from that circle, and to and make sure they never get above it.
Yeah. Our friend Cal, who was on earlier, just wants to say to you that perhaps it's the bull man at the centre of the labyrinth. Bullies and all that sort of thing.
I'm sorry, I can't really hear you. You're a bit low. What's that about the labyrinth?
Sorry, no, it was a previous guest who was on was Kyle Hunt.
Yes.
He sent a message saying that just to let you know, it's probably the bull man at the centre of the labyrinth.
Yeah, well, that's the reason I used that motif, the labyrinth. That's another thing I'm very interested in. I talk a lot about mythology and stuff like that. And if you look at, I'm a huge fan of Carl Jung and specifically Joseph Campbell, the American mythologist. If you look at, and their studies of comparative mythologies all over the world have often talked about at the centre, there's always the story of someone who goes into the centre, into the labyrinth, into the abyss, whether it's Dante and Dante's Inferno, the Minotaur, Orpheus in the underworld. It's a recurring motif, like what James Joyce would call the monomyth, that appears all out through human history, and this is ultimately what my work in Psychopath is about. It's about finding meaning in this whole issue. And what it really is, in our lives, not most of us, but many of us will be targeted by a psychopath in our lives, either in a relationship, either in a friendship, either through a bully in the workplace or a crazy boss. And in many ways, this idea of the labyrinth is that kind of archetypal motif that we're being called into the darkest depths to confront not only the predator in the dark, the psychopath, and indeed our own shadow that may have led us there to begin with, but also to try and emerge from the labyrinth with meaning and become a kind of an independent hero. And I feel that's basically what's happening with the world right now. There's a great awakening towards psychopathology that's taken place. It's very commonly talked about now, where about 5 years ago, everyone thought a psychopath was an axe killer. And we're facing the shadow of our own, darkness that we've allowed ourselves to bring these like predators to the top. And that ties in. I think that's what Kyle meant by that. But there's absolutely a lot of truth to that. I would agree. Yes.
It's interesting. You're talking about the labyrinth, and it made me think of our guest last week, Darren Diogi. He was putting emphasis on spirals. You sort of get into situations and then they spiral. So the idea of the labyrinth, it's like we're unraveling. We've got to unravel our way out of these situations in us, and the way it unravels may be like spiraling.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool you mentioned that. I have a DVD. I did a gig in Manchester a couple of weeks ago called Breaking the Babylon Line. It was an all-day sort of workshop. And I've also got a DVD coming out. It's already out at the moment, called Breaking the Babylon Line. And it's all about right-left brain exercise. I know quite a lot now about how the brain works in terms of neuroplasticity and neural pathways and synapses and things like that, mirror and motor neurons, and how we actually enhance our consciousness through our brain. Ironically, as a result of realizing that psychopaths don't use these things in their own brains, and being a visual artist myself as well, the spiral is an interesting one, all right, because one of the things I do is I work with people who have special needs. And one of the things I want to encourage in that is for them to draw spirals. If you look at spirals, they appear on like an earliest, cave art. All the megalithic monuments in this part of the world are covered in them. And there's a reason for that. The spiral is an interesting shape in that it not only has a two-dimensional, aspect of the spiral from the center to the outside and from the outside in. But there's also a three-dimensional thing because that spiral goes backwards and forwards in time when you're looking at it. So the spiral allows us to contemplate, unseen forces outside this reality. And I think that's also what the psychopathic experience is, both in a personal level as well. You're being made aware of something that's outside, this five sense experience that has to be dealt with in order for this five sense experience to be more meaningful and ultimately more pleasurable for all of us. The spiral is one of the motifs that allows us to experience that and understand that notion of a greater sense of something beyond the material world that's impacting on this one for very real reasons. And so that's actually a very good observation there. Lots of synchronicity there. I like that.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we have had a sync book author on today, so that's...
I think he might still be with us. Are you there, Kyle?
Is that Earwig of Doom?
Yeah.
Hello, Kyle?
No, that's me.
Hello? Who's this?
Hello? Can
Hello,
you hear me?
That One Radio Lounge.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Hello, Steve. Hello, Fire Chick. Hello, Sonic. And hello, Thomas.
Hi, John.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Oh, hello. Yes, good evening to you all. I'd like to ask Thomas a question, please.
Excellent. Go ahead.
Fire away.
Hello, Thomas. Good evening.
How are you? Nice to meet you.
And you as well. I've very much enjoyed reading your book, Puzzling People. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Oh, thank you.
I just wondered, Thomas, is it possible for a psychopath to be self-aware of their condition?
Oh yes, they are very much self-aware of their condition. They know what they are. Now, it doesn't happen it doesn't happen quickly with them. It's almost like a realization that appears, that manifests within them. It starts based mainly in childhood, where they will see somebody, maybe a child in their circle, or maybe a relative who's going through extreme trauma. Maybe someone died or they're depressed, and they don't understand why they're crying. They don't understand what that is. They look at them and they don't understand what that person's actually going through. It's completely mysterious to them. But they also recognize that it has an enormous social benefit. People will do things for you. You will get things. So then they learn how to mimic suffering and to mimic pain. And they're very, very good copycats. And from this mimicking of trauma, sadness, pity is a very common approach they use to target and manipulate people. Because they know that 96% of the human beings have a genuine empathy and compassion for the rest of humanity. So they exploit that. It becomes very apparent to them too when they're in school that they're different as well. They will often, a psychopathic child now, we shouldn't actually say, if we see a child that has these traits, we shouldn't call them a psychopath, because, childhood is pretty screwed up in lots of ways anyway. But if a child who may be killing animals in childhood is generally a good view of a psychopath, but not killing a couple of bugs or something. I'm talking about killing animals on an industrial scale, and also seeming to be very devious and sadistic about how they trap them and things like that, and they keep count of how many animals they killed one day. And they'll notice they're different than other kids, because other kids will say, that's sick, and then they'll stop. And then they'll do other things, like they will bully children in school, and they won't bully them at first. They'll do things like they'll flatter and make friends with, say, a sensitive kid in school, and they'll watch this kid, they'll study this child. And they will see that when they say nice things and kind and compassionate things to a friend at school, his face lights up. And then one day, as a test out of the blue, the psychopathic child, the teenager, will suddenly turn on them or make fun of them in front of all the other kids. And notice that the kid's acne comes out, the kid starts shaking, his pupils change, maybe his asthma comes. And they learn that they have a power over other people because they're unburdened by emotions. And then they may not always say to themselves, oh, I'm a psychopath, but they'll definitely all know that they're not like everyone else.
Okay, yeah.
And they love it, and they love it, and this is the whole thing. It's not that they're suffering. They absolutely love it because it fills them full of power.
So they've got a certain theory of mind, but it's a warped sense of theory of mind, would you say?
What it is, like everything else in the universe, This is my specific theory of psychopathology, and I actually believe that it hasn't been disproved by anyone yet. And I think, if anything, the evidence has shown that it's probably more likely to be the one the most proven. Just like everything in the universe is a duality: up, down, left, right, positive, negative, male, female, black, white, and that's how the universe is created, through the interaction between these two dualistic poles, this polarity. Just like you would have an empathic, human consciousness like the rest of us we have, listening to this show on this program right now, you will also have a predatory consciousness. And this predatory consciousness enters into a human body and becomes the psychopath. This is why their brain structure is different. Well, not the brain structure isn't different, but the electrical and neurochemical workings of their brain are different, because they don't tailor a brain towards compassion, love, understanding, and empathy. They tailor a brain towards predatory intent. This is why they seem to live almost exclusively in the reptilian complex of their brain, which is the lower part of the brainstem, and it's the part of the brain used with predatory hunting, power and control, and sexual activity. They mostly there with some aspects into the mammalian complex in the midbrain. And if you look at them under a CAT scan, psychopaths are one of the easiest pathologies to actually determine. You just stick them under a CAT scan and you show them either harrowing images or, beautiful images, and they show no difference in the frontal lobes of their brain between one and the other, where a normal person would. They would actually have a response, a neurochemical and a neuroelectrical response to seeing harrowing images. And that's what it is. They have a predator's brain. It's horses for courses. But ultimately, it's a biological and organic manifestation of an underlying predatory consciousness.
Right. I've heard also that having an overdeveloped eye chakra and an underdeveloped heart chakra, is that kind of along the same lines as what you were just saying?
Well, yeah, the Hindu stuff's interesting as well in that sense, with the chakras. I've been thinking a lot about, in terms of my own sort of interest, in art and mythology. The game of Snakes and Ladders. The Snakes and Ladders is actually based on a Hindu game. And the actual idea is that the ladder is it represents ascendancy, or, moving up the chakras, where the snakes moving down. And the whole purpose of the game is to teach you about karma and karmic cycles. But if you look at the snakes, right, it really looks like the reptilian complex of the brain leading down to the lower chakra through the
whole
snake,
vibration,
So there's a lot of that. There's definitely something to that, So I don't even think they have any kind of, spiritual identity. There's no way. You wouldn't even be talking about chakras with them in the same way you wouldn't be even talking about a soul. It's just it's an organic robot that's primed for power and control and predatory intent. Like when a psychopath goes to sleep at night, it's the most bizarre thing. They literally close their eyes and they're out. And they wake up, it's the same thing, they step out of bed. It's a machine turning on and off. They don't have any internal reflection at the end of the day of their lives. It's just pure business.
Yeah. Johnny, still there?
Hello?
Are you still there, caller?
John has muted him there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, hi John. You're buzzing quite a lot, mate, so we're just going to keep you on mute, but if you want to ask him...
Have you got any more questions, or what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I've got another question, if I can remember what it was. Sorry, yeah, my headset is a bit dodgy, I'm afraid. It hums a bit. So, let me know about the levels and things like that.
Okay.
I suppose, yes, Thomas, I suppose as kids, I mean, most little boys go around, pulling the wings off flies and things like that. But most of us grow out of it. I mean, if we don't, when does this start becoming a problem as we get older? Do people still mentally go around pulling the wings off flies, but they don't actually act on those thoughts? Are they still psychopathic in nature?
I'm a bit confused. You're saying most little boys will actually kill some kind of animal at some stage in their life. I agree with that. They'll pull the wings off butterflies and stuff like that. It seems to be a sort of an evolutionary thing that young boys go through, maybe to develop their hunting skills or killing skills or something. But 96% of them grow out of that. What would happen? You're just talking about if you suspected there was a psychopathic child that you knew, and they weren't growing out of that, well, they will grow out of killing the animals if they even do that. But you'll notice that they become very, very manipulative and devious very quickly at an early age. The psychopathic females will become very sexually active at a young age and learn how to use their sexuality to blackmail and bribe, boys and even older men. They'll have sex with men when they're, 14 or 13-year-old psychopathic female will have sex with a guy in his 20s and then say, if you don't give me like £100, I'm going to tell the police you statutorily raped me. They're very, very devious. A psychopathic boy will be doing things like he'll have a strange motley crew of friends. They'll be all different age groups, usually always older, and he'll be using them to get things like cigarettes and beer at a very young age. And he'll be devious, and he'll be devious at home, and he'll always be causing trouble for the family. A psychopathic female will be completely out of control in the sense that she will not listen to anything her parents tell her. Doesn't matter what kind of family she comes from. If she wants to move in, if she wants to start having sex at 12, 13, 14, she'll start doing it all the boys in the neighborhood. It won't be for the same reason. She won't be learning she won't be falling in love or being romantic like a normal teenage girl. She'll be doing it to learn how to manipulate boys. And male psychopaths will be similar. They'll just notice a manipulative deviousness about them that they never grow out of. And absolutely no ability to say sorry or feel guilty for anything.
Okay, thank you. When I was reading your book, Puzzling People, it really made me question myself. I don't know if that was part of the reason why you wrote the book for people to.
Well, if you're worried you're a psychopath, then you're not. It's as simple as that.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you, Thomas.
Because you wouldn't give a shit. No, you wouldn't give a shit. You wouldn't give a shit. You wouldn't even be on this show. Look, we've all done things in our lives, all of us, every last one of us, that we shouldn't have done. That was cruel, nasty, manipulative, devious. The difference between us and a psychopath is we actually give a shit that we hurt someone. That we don't want to go through our lives like this. That we want to make amends for hurt and pain we've caused others. A psychopath doesn't think that way. The psychopaths who've read my book have said to me, "You did a really good job. You described me to a T." But they don't say things like, "I'm a bit concerned." Like a few people have read my book and said, "Thomas, I'm a bit worried because I've done those things." And I said, "You want to know something? I've done some of those things too in my life. At some stage, I was in a rock band. I lived in New York. I was, I had my fun. I had my good times. I did things I shouldn't have done, But I don't like myself for it. And I know I wasn't doing it to be devious. It just happened. But a psychopath is very different. That's the answer to that question. If you're worried you're a psychopath, I can guarantee you you're not.
Okay, so if you're asking the questions, you're basically in the clear then.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Okay.
Now that's not to say you may have that's actually a good thing for all of us to ask that, because then we can think to ourselves, okay, what is causing me to have these doubts that I may be psychopathic or have psychopathic traits, and then you can work on solving whatever those little sort of idiosyncratic mannerisms or maybe even pathologies that we all have to some degree, and you can work them out of your system.
Yeah.
So it's knowledge is always power with this subject for everyone.
I think it sort of that goes forward to different forms of mental illness. If you're questioning whether or not you've got a mental illness, then you probably haven't. It's
yeah. My next book, Defeated Demons, it's basically Puzzling People Part 2, but it goes a bit further than that. I'm going to basically go to war against the psychiatric profession. This has been a disaster for the human race, psychiatry. It has, modern psychiatry specifically with its involvement with big pharma.
Yeah. Pharmaceuticals, exactly. You hit that right.
I remember seeing a documentary on YouTube a while ago, and it was at a psychiatry conference, and they were basically had the new forms of drugs, and then they were creating syndromes specifically for those drugs.
Yes, it's disgusting. When the DSM, the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, first came out, there was probably a dozen or so genuine, mental problems or issues that needed to be worked on. Now there's over 600. Are we getting more crazy, or are there more medications and treatment programs for sale? And this is why psychiatry is an appalling, and I'm not saying all psychiatrists are bad people. I know there's plenty of psychiatrists probably good people. But the profession itself is psychopathic. That's just the end of it. Nowadays it is. It just exists to rake money off people and create fake disorders and sell treatment programs, and it does terrible damage. I'll give you an example in terms of psychopathology, how it does terrible damage. If you are a victim of a psychopath, and when you're a victim of a psychopath in a personal relationship, or a bully at work, it has appalling physiological damage on the person, because their bodies are in a mess from the shock. They're literally going through post-traumatic stress. The psychopath will be very unwilling to actually believe that you've dealt with a psychopath. In fact, they don't even like to use the word psychopath. They refuse to even believe. A psychopath is no more real to a psychiatrist than a leprechaun or a fairy. They prefer to use terms like antisocial personality disorder. Ridiculous. What does that mean? Someone who doesn't like to go to pubs. Borderline personality disorder, which is a disaster. That's a condition that has absolutely no empirical science behind it, yet it's in the psychiatric manual, and it's actually being diagnosed in many women who are psychopathic. That's why the numbers between psychopathic males and females are so skewed towards there being more male psychopaths, because the vast majority of female psychopaths are diagnosed as being borderline. Or narcissistic personality disorder, another ridiculous name they come up with. We're all narcissistic to some degree, but narcissism is what they're describing is really psychopathology with a nice cuddly name. So psychiatry is a catastrophe. Modern psychiatry is an appalling catastrophe. It's something we must reject wholesale, have nothing to do with it. The fact that psychiatry has so much power in our societies, in schools, in organizations, in the business place, in government, should set off enormous amount of red flags. Why? Because psychiatry exists to control the rest of us. It's very, very good for the control system, because it creates a notion that we're all suffering from some kind of disorder and we all need to be medicated. Even if you question the government now, you're diagnosed with ODD, oppositional defiancy disorder. You're classified as mentally ill.
Did they not call psychiatry the new religion in the 70s?
Yeah, well, when you look at the word psychotherapy, you split the etymology up, you get psycho the rapist.
Well, I mean, there is also the question of consent in all this. The doctors and the psychiatrists may offer these pills, but it's how downtrodden the people have got through the bombardment of unrealistic objectives that push people into feeling so emancipated. They need these Seroxet, SSRIs, because I mean the SSRIs do have a purpose, but not for the general populace, because the general populace, their serotonin levels are absolutely fine. They just need to get a bit more sunshine, get a bit more vitamin D in them, rather than take psychoactive drugs, which is what they are, and then the getting off those drugs, the withdrawal can lead to like suicide. Hearing voices. So it's almost like they prescribe something for somebody that doesn't necessarily need it, and then when they're trying to get off it, they display mental health.
Signs they needed it in the first place.
The signs of mental health issues, and then they're put onto more drugs.
Yeah, there's another angle to this though. You can also be sectioned, can't you, and forced to be put on this medication.
Yeah, but they are.
So what? Thomas is saying is it is a completely psychopathic profession.
Yeah, but
As far as they can bend the rules to just do what they want to you.
Well, regarding melatonin and serotonin, all you need is a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
And not be up at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning playing video games and watching rapid moving images on your widescreen TV. You can and as you said there, you should just go out and get some sunshine and a walk in the park. That's a very simple thing. We see ultimately with this sort of like psychiatric profession, the underlying thing is that they don't believe that unhappiness should exist and everything is a chemical imbalance, that you should be happy all the time. And that's completely unnatural, because a society where there's nothing but happiness is a society that's dead, because it's the flux between depression and elation is what actually causes art, creativity, and the actual the energies which create society and keeps us dynamic and vibrant.
And that's the flow of life, isn't it? That's the flow. Yeah, we're affected by, we're 70% water, so we're affected by we've got a tide going inside us, we've got a flow going on inside us, so it's a pendulum.
Exactly, and it's all very natural and it's all very beautiful, and it's something we should embrace. We should embrace our different sides, our good, our bad, our light. We have to confront them. We manifested into this reality not to succumb to our humanity and to our problems, but to master them, to master this reality. And things like psychotropic drugs like Xanax and so on, they all have a HCl prefix on them, which is hydrochloric acid. That's how they work. They burn through the blood-brain barrier, and they actually start rotting and dissolving your brain, your motor and mirror neurons, and slowing down your synapses. So you're not being cured of anything, you're just being turned into a vegetable.
Yeah.
And the experiences that you have in your life, things that you look back on and or at times if you feel like, oh my God, that was dreadful, you've had a bad experience, you've made bad decisions, had a bad time. Those experiences are usually the biggest things in your life that you can actually build on and make a positive from, if you choose to see it in that way and move on that way.
That's how I
and so this is the idea that actually difficult things in your life are things which are actually going to develop you, and so if you're completely happy all the time, you're never actually going to grow, you're never going to develop. So it's actually
learn by your mistakes.
Learn by your mistakes. Yeah, it's just impossible to think, oh right, I'm just going to be in a state of complete happiness all the time. All right, you might be able to kind of see, the glass half full even when you've had a difficult time. That's quite a good way to go about your life, just to be able to make mistakes and say, right, well, I'll move on now. But you don't have to be ecstatically happy and in this state all the time. And what you're saying there about being medicated all the time for things, I know now that doctors are giving out antidepressants like, they give out antidepressants, I think, more than they give out antibiotics. A friend of mine was telling me about a friend of hers who had gone to the doctors. Her mother had died, so she was obviously going through bereavement, and the doctor was going to give, the first thing he offered was antidepressants. Bereavement is an experience that, she wasn't in need of that. She was just in need of a little bit of support, and that was it really. She was just feeling a bit low. She wasn't feeling like she wanted to kill herself or anything.
Oh yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? It's sickening. It's sickening that this all goes back to the likes of Aldous Huxley and his chemical revolution, where he said in the future we won't need concentration camps. We'll just have everyone medicated. And that's exactly what's happened. You see, the governments love all these antidepressants because a drugged up, undynamic populace is one that won't actually rise up and question the government. Now, the idea that a doctor prescribes antidepressants to somebody who's grieving, in a sane society, he would be immediately struck off the list.
Yeah.
But we don't live in a sane society. We live in a society controlled by psychopaths. A psychopath does not understand grieving. When a psychopath's child, mother, best friend, or partner dies, they just don't see grieving. What they might see if their wife dies is, who's going to cook my dinner? So when you have a psychopathic culture leading the rest of us, they don't get grieving. They don't get it. So they'll just say, oh, they're just feeling a bit down. Give them Xanax.
Could I just say, I believe I read an article online this week where the DSM is about to be updated.
Oh yeah, well they're always updating it as new drugs come out.
And that, well, one of the features of the new DSM will be a problem with mourning for too long. That will be a new problem.
Children.
And also spending too much time online. That's another problem.
Oh, yeah, well, the thing about online is very interesting. The Telegraph ran a newspaper story recently that the sort of Truther network all jumped on, and this is like one of the problems I have with this Truther awakening community, is they don't stop and really think about a lot of things. They just jump in and think it's out of something, it means something, they're sinister or something, but it was actually a brilliantly insightful story to how we're being controlled, but they took it the wrong way, most people. The Telegraph ran a story saying that the doctors have now determined, you know, the usual crap, that children's brains are being changed by being online. Now, they tried to make the word change seem as if that was the same thing as damaged.
Yeah.
You change your brain by doing all kinds of things. You build new neural pathways. You create new neuroplasticity. The real issue was they have spent years trying to tell people to get offline because people are learning things. They're waking up online. Yeah. And so they tried the child pedophile rings on the internet, and it didn't work. So then now their new tactic is now get your child off their computer because their brain is being damaged. What's happening is they know that kids may be going on to learn about Justin Bieber, but they might see a YouTube video that may cause them to question their society or their school teachers. And that's what they're really on about with these articles. Exactly. Being on the internet does not change your brain in any negative way, unless you're watching the same garbage you watched on mainstream TV. It's not the internet quite it has been for so many people an upgrade of their consciousness. And that's maybe what we should start thinking of the internet in that terms. We're actually now developing telepathy for the first time ever.
Yeah. Well, that's what we hope to achieve with the Type 1 Radio Lounge.
Yeah, like with, I think one of our previous guests, Alan Green, he was saying that things like Twitter are almost becoming a telepathy in themselves.
Yeah, it could be. Now, you have to be careful here. We're not being sort of like spirited into a transhumanist kind of thing.
No, absolutely, yeah.
But I do think on a kind of an intuitive, noetic and level, absolutely. Like even when I'm talking with you guys now, I feel, even though I can't see you, I don't know what you look like, but just the whole process of engaging this sort of like idea of what you may be wearing, where you're sitting, what you look like, it's almost developing a sense of I can anticipate your personality is via your syntax, how you address and answer questions, and you're doing the same with me, and it is developing a whole new level of intuitive awareness that we weren't getting on television, where it was all a one-way dialogue, and that's what they're really afraid of.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
It's too.
Well, you're going to find out what we look like soon.
Yeah, you're coming to Brighton, aren't you?
Yeah, when are you coming to Brighton?
I'm going to be in Brighton on the 1st March at the Brighton Centre as part of a little mini tour of the south of England.
Oh, is it just in the south? Where else are you going to be at?
The first I'm in Brighton at the Brighton Centre, and then I'm doing the art conference in Bath. On the Saturday, March 3rd, I'm going to be talking about how you can use creativity to get yourself out of emotional trauma rather than taking Xanax and things like that, which is ironic, we just talked about that. And then the 4th, I'm going to be delivering in the Chapel Arts Centre in Bath a big presentation on the psychopathic control grid and basically how psychopath is being attacked, human beings are being attacked by psychopaths. Then I'm doing some work with some special needs kids in London, that's for a school. And then I'm going down to Bournemouth on the 8th, and I'll be doing a thing on political psychopathology there.
Excellent.
Just to go back to what Sonic was saying earlier, the girl who he was talking about is called Jennifer Palmer, who's doing the thing about Twitter being sort of thing, and her blog's called The Reality Sandwich.
That sounds good, yeah.
It's really good, yeah.
I think I've heard of that. Yeah, I think she's definitely onto something there. But like I said, we have to be careful about this this transhumanist thing, because they'll start saying, "Oh well, you're getting psychic, you're getting almost telepathic just by being on Twitter. Why not have a chip in your brain?" You know, so we have to think about that too.
Or just have a vaccine with it in.
The thing with putting chips and things in your brain, though, is that you can learn as many foreign languages as you like, and you can read as many, have as many books as you like imprinted on your brain. But it doesn't make you any wiser. It doesn't make you any better at bringing up kids, or
it doesn't give you experience, basically,
does it? Give you experience.
Yeah, it's like you know. It's like having sex with a different prostitute every night for money and saying you're the world's greatest ladies man. You know, it means nothing at the end of the day. It's a delusion. A delusion of intellectual superiority. It's exactly the opposite. You're actually destroying the brain.
Telepathy of the internet as well, and I kind of always feel that through contacting so many great people over in America through the radio show and through the Friends of Freeman network, it just really, all that did was just underline and kind of say, yes, that, you know, people anywhere are thinking like you, whether you're, and so if the internet were to disappear tomorrow, it would just be, I would have confirmation that no matter what was going on in my life, no matter what seems to be like, oh well, you know, is it just me thinking like this? No, it is happening everywhere, and you should never feel that it's just you feeling like that. Not that I was feeling like that, but just, you know, you hear people saying, oh, you know, it wasn't until I joined this group that I realised that there were more people feeling this way or something, and I mean, I'm the sort of person that will just kind of go off and get on with something anyway. I don't really need that kind of pat on the back sort of feel about things.
Information.
But obviously it's nice to have people, you know, around. And I mean, I've met Nick through the Friends of Freeman, and Nick's been great. I mean, I feel like I've known Nick all my life, and we only met a few months ago. Yeah. And and Howard.
And now we've got a radio show.
Yeah, and now we've got a radio show, and we're talking with people on the other side of the world who have similar interests and everything. And so I feel like it's this this thing that it's not the internet itself which is providing the telepathy. It's just that we're beginning to realise and open our minds to the fact that we are all feeling the same all around the world. And we're where we are for a reason, and we just need to get on with what we need to get on with, where we are in the world.
The return of the tribe. That's what's really happening.
Yeah.
We're finding our tribe through our Wi-Fi and our broadband, but we're finding our tribe, and that's what's happened. And that's exactly what you're describing there. You may not find you may have grown up not really feeling a part of your tribe in the town or the neighborhood you grew up in. And you may, like I think most of us in this scene probably grew up that way, feeling a little different and feeling a little odd, feeling a bit of an outsider. And then suddenly you find this thing called the internet, and then you realize that, no, I'm not a freak. I'm actually part of a huge movement that doesn't get any kind of exposure in the mainstream. And it's very comforting.
Yeah. I think also that we need to realise that, okay, so we have a friendship group and a support group which is worldwide, where we're all kind of on this kind of vibe, but that we have to be accustomed to the fact that we're actually on our own within our communities, and that in some way we have to give something to our communities to feel part of our communities, because like you say, that people often feel like, oh, they're on their own, that, you know, nobody else. I often hear this amongst people I hate that word truth movement, so I'm not really going to say it, but people who are perhaps thinking in a broader sense, they maybe feel a little bit on their own, and I think that if you're feeling like that, then you're actually not, you're not contacting your community enough, and you need to actually, you know, get down and dirty, get your hands into the earth, and I don't necessarily mean gardening, I mean that metaphorically, but you need to actually start engaging in your community in ways that you're becoming part of it, and just opening, and you know, not going up to people and saying, oh, this 9/11, or do you know this is happening or that's happening, but actually just bringing your gifts to the community, which, you know, can be giving or making, or I don't know, whatever your gifts happen to be. You need to be now moving into that kind of
co-creation,
that kind of feeling, co-creation, so that you're not feeling like, oh no, I'm living in this community and nobody understands me and nobody recognizes where I'm at, but when I'm on the internet I can connect with people around the world and they know where I'm at, because that's not the point. I think that you have to actually connect with your own communities and just know that people around the world are doing it, because that's what makes you you're forging the way, as it were. You know, it's not easy to be someone forging the way, and I'm not saying that I'm forging the way, or
we are.
Well, can I just say something there? Can I just say something to that?
Yeah.
I think your reasons for wanting to do that is very noble and very beautiful and very human, but it's got to the point now where I just say, fuck the sheeple. I don't care about them. I stopped caring about them. I'm talking about the adult sheeple now. I'm not talking about the children. They're the ones we can still reach. But the people who are watching X Factor and supporting Man United and paying their Sky TV subscription and going, you know, and not realizing that they would have a better life without it, and who laugh at you and call you a conspiracy theorist, then I don't care about them. My job wasn't put on this earth to save them. My job on this was put on this earth to actually find like-minded people and actually through them maybe create a sort of 100-monkey process. But like, I absolutely agree. These walking down the street and saying 9/11 was an inside job is not going to get you anywhere. You're only going to get laughed at and ridiculed. Walking down the street and telling people about Codex Alimentarius is not going to work. And I think one of the greatest things, great catastrophes for this so-called truth movement, and I agree with you, I hate that term too as well. It's almost fascistic when you think about it. The truth. There is no absolute truth. There isn't. There doesn't exist.
No.
If you walk down, like if you walk up to some, you know, a lot of people in the early days of waking up, they might have seen a few YouTube videos, didn't specifically get all the facts about something, but knew that something wasn't wrong. Suddenly went to their friends and family and said, oh, do you know this, that, and the other? And they were laughed and ridiculed. Relationships have broken up, you know, and the reason is that is because...
usually after watching Zeitgeist.
Yeah, Zeitgeist has been a catastrophe, and the whole Zeitgeist movement is a disaster. But the Venus Project is like, you know, the return of like the Nazis.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been very good. Yeah, that's just like that's just all transhumanist bullshit.
Yeah.
That's UN Agenda 21 through the back door. But yes, my attitude is I'm in my community. I'm friends with all these people. I'm nice to them. They don't know anything about me and my work. Some of them do, but most of them don't. And the reason for that is they don't care. They're not saying there's something wrong with them. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them, but they really do want X Factor. They really do want Botox. They really do want fashions. They really do care about Peter, Andre, and Jordan. And I'm not going to waste my time with those people. I'm not going to try and wake them up. I'm not going to try to reach them. Maybe this is part of their experience in this time around, in this manifestation of their reality. Maybe they're experience. You know, so and it's not for us to actually say, hey, listen, you're not woken up, because at the end of the day, I often wonder, am I woken up? You know, how clever am I? You know, and I see like these people who walk down, like following Alex Jones down the street with their bullhorns. I mean, they just make me sick. You know, like they think they have some kind of special knowledge, and they're so much more clever than everyone else because they saw a 10-minute YouTube video which explains, and they really don't know dick, you know. And it's like, and you're right there about Zeitgeist. That was a nightmare. That was. Thank God that thing is all finished now. But
it's amazing how many people I meet going, oh, Zeitgeist, what a great movie that was. And I'm like, yeah, well, why don't you watch this instead? Why don't you watch this? This will give you a bit more information.
Yeah, and so blatantly, a lot of it is and like they were talking about like the Osiris and the whole myth and all that stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that, but there's still I'm not a Christian, but there's still real, valuable, meaningful things within the canon of Christianity, as there are in Judaism and Islam. And to suddenly say, oh, all organized religion, every single aspect of it is made up and it all comes from Asher's theology, that's just such a bad way to live your life. Everything has a meaningful experience.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I don't want to wake anybody up. I just want to...
No, and good for you.
I just want to be friendly.
Yeah, just be friendly and sociable. And if somebody, like, I'll give you an example. Here's a great story that happened to me a few years ago. I was standing in my local train station waiting to get a train to Dublin. And this old guy walks up to me and he just started, like, he just started making a conversation with me about, they just rebuilt the train lines, and it was like a lovely fast new train line. And he looks at the train tracks and he says, do you know, it's amazing to think that the wheels of the train don't actually touch the track. And then I says, yeah. I says, but the amazing thing is there's not even a train and a track when you think about it. And he says, yeah, you know about quantum physics. And that was just a farmer who stumbled upon it through... He read Michael Talbot's The Holographic Universe. Excellent. And we had this lovely conversation, and then we never saw each other ever again.
Wow. Beautiful.
And that's the way, they're the moments that I cherish, and I'm not going to frustrate myself with, trying to convert people who really can't be converted.
Well, funnily enough, my supervisor at work caught me reading the Sync book at work on Friday sort of thing, and he actually asked me, he's going, oh, have you ever seen that film Zeitgeist?
Excellent.
Which was a bit of a mind blower.
Okay, right, we'll have a little smoke break. This is Mr. Scruff and Jazz Potato. See you in about 6 minutes. It'll play, there we go. That was Mr. Scruff and Jazz Potato. We are back on the Type 1 Radio Lounge. Just a couple of announcements. Tomorrow on the network here we have Meditative Living with Swami Shivananda Giri. That will be on at 9 p.m. Central Time, American Time. So for any English listeners, that was like 3 o'clock in the morning Monday. Listen to the podcast.
And can I just as well mention that on Frater X's show tonight we've got the Grand Archduke John Michael Greer, the author of Apocalypse Not, Everything You Need to Know About 2012, Nostradamus, and Rapture is Wrong. So that's Frater X tonight on American. The Rapture is Wrong. That's American Freedom Radio tonight, Frater X.
At 10,
it's going to be brilliant, that show. 10
p.m. Central, that is, yeah. And next week on the Type 1 Radio Lounge, we welcome Jay Parker, who will be here to talk about all things Organite and maybe some of his Illuminati family, maybe even
some mind control, perhaps.
Some SRA. If anybody wants to watch his talk at the Free Your Mind conference, it's on YouTube, just Free Your Mind, Jay Parker. Very, very interesting stuff. So we'll get back to Thomas. Hello, Thomas, are you there?
Hi, still here.
Excellent, excellent. You got that drink of water?
I did indeed.
Okay, I think it's probably wise to tell them we've got 10 minutes of the live show left, and we've got another hour, Thomas, of podcast, so if you're willing to continue, we'd love to hear more from you.
Sure, yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Right.
Excellent. It's quite interesting that you've got the site called Labyrinth of the Psychopath, is it? Yeah?
Yeah.
And then the one of the Think book authors he's got a site called Labyrinth of the Psychonaut, which is quite interesting, I think.
Oh, Steve Wilmer.
Yeah,
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. We came out with the thing around the same time. And,
Oh, really?
I really like his videos.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Well, the guy we were talking to earlier, Kyle, is part of a thing called the Sync Book, which is 26 synchromistic sort of bloggers who have come together and put, for the first time, into print some of their theories and sort of thoughts, and it's a fascinating book. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Can you post the link of Kyle's book, or just send it to me here? I'd like to check that out.
Yeah, sure. It's it's 26 authors. It's not just Kyle.
If you just go to syncbook.com, you'll find it.
Cool. I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by synchromysticism. It's just such an interesting thing to me. I think there's genuinely something to it, but it's far more complex than just like seeing, a pyramid and an eye in a movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
are we making it? Is there something? I think the archetypes they do survive. They do transcend, and they do fluctuate through our experience in this world. So I'm always fascinated by that idea, of how the actual synchronicities happen and why. I do believe that's all part. This is our. I have a series of videos on YouTube called Our Emerging Mythos, and it's basically to try and was Joseph Campbell wrong when he said that man had no modern mythology, and this is what made us neurotic? And I think he was right until the advent of this community on the internet, and we are now the new mythology, and we are the emerging mythos, and a major part of that is the synchronistic and synchromistic.
Yeah. I mean, but it's coming through other things. It's not just like the old sort of myths. It's actually coming through in other artists' sort of work.
Yeah.
It's funny though, with synchromysticism, I think it's quite interesting. Like I was talking to Kyle earlier about, he was talking about the rainbow, what did he call it? The rainbow
alphabet.
The rainbow alphabet, which he uses and which he finds really useful.
He kind of came up with it.
His work, and he came up with this thing. And I think that it's interesting that in the synchromistic realms, that people are coming up with their own ways of divination into finding the ways.
Oh yeah. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, and they're not exclusive to themselves. It's not like they've got this gift which is just exclusive to them and no one else knows how to access it. It's like, well, no, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm using. These are the results I'm getting from using this. And other people can use it and find it, but you can actually go out and find your own way as well. It's not something that is like that somebody else has.
Become your own mystic, in other words.
Yes. You do not have to join the OTO. You do not have to become a Wiccan. You do not have to subscribe to the dogma of McGregor's Mathers or Aleister Crowley or any of these people. In fact, I often wonder if those so-called rituals are a trap.
Yeah.
So, you have to spend all this time studying these complex ritual scenarios and magical incantations, the Lesser Key of Solomon. The reality is that what we're doing at this moment is an act of magic. We've manifested this conversation out of nothing. Yeah. And what's happening now is, and magic is not this airy-fairy, esoteric thing that you have to spend decades studying. We live in a world of magic.
We live in it, absolutely. Words of spells, aren't they?
Yeah, and this whole thing of like, oh, well, I joined the OTO, so I have certain powers. No, you had those powers before you actually picked up the Lesser Key of Solomon.
You know what? That's just like the Wizard of Oz, because at the end of the Wizard of Oz, the fairy says to Dorothy, "What did you learn, Dorothy?" And she says, "Well, I learned that to find my heart's desires, I didn't even need to go." She says, "If I want to go searching for my heart's desires, I won't go any further than my own backyard." So basically, she's saying that you can learn the mysteries of life just within. They're all within yourself. You know, you don't have to actually go searching for them. But obviously, the journey is part of it itself. You have to go on the journey to find that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The oneness is within.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And I think this sort of relates to John Lash's stuff about the awakening consciousness of the planet. I think that the synchronicities, they're coming so fast now that it's almost that the planet is becoming self-aware again, and we are that self-awareness.
Yeah, I think that really, self-aware is the word. I think that it's not that they're coming faster. I think that we're just becoming more aware of them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well,
in the last million years, the human frontal cortex, which is really what makes us human, has developed 5 times. And this expansion of the frontal lobes of the human brain had happened, evolutionary terms, almost overnight. So something triggers us. In the past, there's very good evidence to suggest it was things like the development of art and language, the last big jump in the Paleolithic era. We're overdue for another leap. And I often wonder if this is what's happening with us now. If we're so, this is why we have to be so careful of what we let into our consciousness at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, because we have to. They're trying to do everything to hold us down from making this next evolutionary leap, and it's basically going to be a rapid development of our neuroplasticity and through epigenetics and our neural pathways that will actually allow us to experience this consciousness to a more fuller degree. And this is what's happening now. And this is why we must be so protective of what we let in there. Garbage in, garbage out.
Absolutely.
Shut off the TV and everything like that. You know, get away from toxic people. Get away from psychopathic people especially. And start developing your right brain, because our analytical left brain system that we're brought into our education system here.
Good, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, my new film
I was really interested to hear you saying about the you've been looking into the right brain, left brain development, because that's something that I really think is important, that we do start developing more the right brain and the intuitive side, the spontaneous side, this kind of kidney energy, this real spontaneity of life. This is what's going to, because you can't plan for spontaneity, and so any plans that are set in place by an overarching authority can be thwarted by spontaneity, because they can't plan for spontaneity.
Yeah, psychopaths are no good at creativity and adaptability. They can only operate through systems, functions, hierarchies.
When they understand how it works, yeah.
Which gets back to the next point about John Lash's work. He deals on the archonic sort of senses that are sort of, kind of ruling the world, which is very much along the lines of what your work's about, Thomas.
Well, let me just say, firstly, yes, the archons is a fascinating allegory, motif, legend, story, whatever you want to call it, that in many ways does seem to describe that negative consciousness, that consciousness parasite that I talk about in my own work. So it does have merit, and it is something that's worth.
Don't worry about that.
It's something that we definitely have to look into. As regarding this idea of other beings and other dimensions, I could definitely go for that. I mean, I've taken my fair share of hallucinogenics over the years. And, I've seen these grey aliens long before I ever even knew what one was. And a particularly incredible, magic mushroom trip went back when I was in my late teens. And so yes.
Well, on that bombshell, just let's say to the live listeners that we're going to leave you now, but we're going to be carrying on for another 1 hour on the podcast with the fascinating Thomas Sheridan.
So listen to that.
We'll listen to that later on, sort of thing. And
next week, join us.
Thanks for listening. It's been a fantastic show.
Yeah, and next week, listen to Jay Parker.
Jay Parker, which is
Don't forget Freighter X's show coming up on American Freedom Radio.
American Freedom Radio. And Freeman if he's around. And
Freeman.
And Swami tomorrow.
Later on in the day.
Thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle, as well.
Part of the show.
Good.
Thank you, guys.
Well, I certainly ain't no fortunate one, but on the other hand, I'm very fortunate because I've just got everything I need in my little world. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Type 1 Radio Lounge, and we've got Thomas Sheridan. Are you there, sir?
Welcome. I am indeed.
Good.
So tell us more about these psychedelic experiences, Tom.
Yeah. Let's get deep.
Okay.
Where were you? What type of mushrooms were they?
Yeah.
Was it in Wales?
No, I was.
With the West Coast one.
I've got a good story for you. You'll like this one. In 1987, I was playing in a band, and I was living in New York. I was about 19, 20, and I was having the time of my life. And that's great. I didn't even drink or anything back then. I didn't even do any other kind of drugs. But I used to like hallucinogenics. I just don't know why. I felt they connected with me. But there were mushrooms from I don't know, from like a head shop or something. They weren't the ones we have here. They weren't Liberty Caps. They were more like the American style ones. The Mexican ones come in a little packet. They look different. And so we were tripping out on a friend's house one night, and I was lying there, and I took a huge dose. I don't know how many, but I triggered what I didn't know what this stuff was at the time, but I triggered what would be considered the classic alien abduction scenario. I saw these things that looked like, what we call the grey aliens, although I'd never seen one to that point. I never even was aware of aliens. I had no interest in UFOs or anything. And I found myself being carried around the living room by these things that were like talking in this sort of like weird voices and prodding me. And I wasn't that freaked out by it because I'd taken like a mushroom when I lived in Ireland when I was younger and stuff. So I had like a lot of experience with entheogens and stuff like that. And I also didn't drink, and I didn't, and I was aware that this was sort of not just like a good time experience. I used to use it for like helping my guitar playing and songwriting and things like that. So anyway, that happened, and then a few weeks later, I'm walking down Fifth Avenue in New York. I was it was a while now. It was a good few years later, like 2 or 3 years later. I was walking down Fifth Avenue in New York near the Rockefeller Center, and there used to be this wonderful bookshop called Britanno's, which was this beautiful old like classic New York bookshop. And I'm coming around the corner, and boom, I see the cover for Whitley Strieber's book Communion, and on the cover is this thing that I'd seen in the dream, in the trip, and I bought the book, and he was talking about visitors, and he was talking about it in the concept of aliens or an alien visitation. I don't believe that aliens have ever visited the Earth, mainly because there's no proof. I'm talking about aliens and spaceships from other planets. I think that's something that we predictably been programmed to think from Star Trek and Hollywood.
I agree with that.
But I don't believe that like any of this they've ever been here. That in terms of evidence proving it. Now, I could be wrong, but that's just my.
Well, I've heard of people who actually have seen alien ships and they've had halogen lights on them, which prove that it's,
it's government. It's government.
World.
Yeah, and also if they're that technologically advanced and coming from the draconian system, they wouldn't need spaceships. They would just fold consciousness and appear in front of us. So this whole they need a spaceship is something that we think Hollywood makes us think. But anyway, so I read the book, and then I saw the movie, and I was telling people, I saw those things, aliens. And I said, no, they weren't aliens. And then I never thought about it for a long time. And then I got the John Keel book, which I can't remember the title of. Let me grab it off the bookshelf.
Literally off the bookshelf.
He was the guy who wrote the Mothman Mysteries. And his book basically outlined weird things like Men in Black and stuff, but I read some other like UFO books, and I hated every single one. I thought it was stupid. All the aliens from outer space, blah, 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 and all this stuff. But he hit the nail on the head when he said the modern alien abduction thing is a continuum of the folk and fairy tradition, which would bring us back to the archons and stuff like that. Now, and that he called them ultra-terrestrials. They're conscious. Well, I won't say this world, but nearby, that we can somehow access.
Sorry, Thomas, we lost you there. Can you just repeat that? The conscious thing.
Yeah, a sort of another kind of conscious being or conscious entity, or maybe another life form that exists just outside our perception,
right?
In probably other realities. And the book Our Haunted Planet by John L. Key, I highly recommend. It's written in 1967 or something, and it's still ahead of its time, because here we are, like, still talk. You go to UFO circles today, they're still talking about bloody Roswell. So this guy was just like things like MUFON. They always strike me as like Alcoholics Anonymous. Like they just want to hear the same thing week after week. But anyway, he's like, the book he's talking about, like, and what I loved about him and John Keel. And it's just one thing that I don't necessarily agree with a lot of John Lash's stuff. I think it's far too. He's almost developed a religion of his own, and I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff. But he's the one who's brought back the idea of the fairy folk tradition, coupled with this notion that these things are scum, things are actual scum. This is one thing that Disney has done. Disney has sexualized and made the fairy cute and sweet. In every single tradition, in every culture, fairies are scum. They're evil. They're manipulative. They're disheveled. Everything. The fairy world seems to be a dump, and you get that in a lot of these alien abduction stories. The spaceships are always described as being dirty, unkempt, and filthy, and they're deceivers. They're always deceivers. They're liars and deceivers. They're deceivers and they tell us stories. Like one of the first guys to have gone to South America to do ayahuasca back in when the beatniks back in the early 60s. He was one of the first Westerners to do it deliberately. And when he came out, when he went on the trip, he met all these like reptilian beings who told him, "Oh, we made human beings through genetic manipulation." And when he came back, he told the old Brazilian guys, "Look, I went on the trip, I met these," and he told them we've all been they were aliens from other planets who genetically manipulated us. And all the old ayahuasca priest guys all started laughing because he said, "They're liars. They lie and they lie and they lie and they tell you any old story and any old guff. And it's all to make you feel that they control you, because there's a sense of envy, a sense of dislike of human beings and the richness of our emotions." So it's very similar to Psychopaths. It's interesting, isn't it? So
very.
The richness of our emotions and our emotional lives and our beauty and the beauty of the world we live in. And that's common through all folk traditions regarding these fairies or these other worldly creatures, trolls who live under bridges. They're not happy. They despise humans. They want to take away and demolish our humanity and the beauty and the goodness and the piety that we have within us. They lie and they deceive, and that's where all that stuff lies. So that was my experience with entogens. I've seen them again in the years since, although I behave myself now. I haven't touched it. Well, not when I'm in Ireland, because you go right to prison if you do. But there's something to it. Whether it's real or not, I don't care. But I think it's a very important thing for human beings to experience. I'm not saying that everyone should do it. Some people just can't handle it because they think it's a party thing or something. They're not mature enough or something. But yes, I don't believe aliens have ever visited Earth. I don't believe in UFO flying spaceships coming from brothers from other planets. I think a lot of this stuff, like these galactic federations of lights, are people who are basically controlled by the government and stuff like that, as part of some kind of future agenda for a one world political system. And the truth is far more complex than anything. And I think, when you study into this stuff, I'm still amazed that people contact me to this day and they said, "I read your book. I love what you wrote about psychopaths." But you're wrong. They're really reptilians from the draconian. And I like to say, well, you don't know that. You don't know that for sure. And you find that what they've learned about it from a 10-minute YouTube video.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
About these
that's
kind
the
of
David Icke thing, isn't it? I'm with you, mate, until you start talking about.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it also, Darren was going on about this last week on the show, saying how much time are people spouting other people's opinions, and rather than going within themselves.
Exactly.
Or even not even researching properly. Like a few years ago, someone said to me that the Illuminati, that's a joke, it doesn't really exist. And then I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to find the book that proves that they do exist. And I've got some really old books, and I have this, I finally found this thing called, it was a book written by the Society of Gypsies. This goes back to 1850, and this is a book written by a Scottish Freemasonic order talking about the history of the Illuminati. So it's pretty much on the nail in terms of history. And what I discovered was that the Illuminati is actually an amazing story. It goes much, much deeper than the Bavarian Illuminati. It extends way back in history, and most of the times during history, they were actually good guys. It wasn't until Weishaupt and the Bavarian Illuminati co-opted the movement in 1766 that it became like this thing devoted to mercantile commerce and republicanism. That was its real form. Its real.
Those bloody Germans.
Sorry.
Those bloody Germans.
Yeah, to transform the European monarch system into a democratic republican system, and the only reason they did it was to make trade more efficient because ships were becoming better, and they wanted to make, this is where all maritime law and everything came from. And they decided that the best way to do this, the money merchants, was through the Freemasonic systems. Now, prior to that, the Illuminati were actually a mystical sect that came out of the Gnostic tradition.
I was just about to say they're the ones who were given the power of ELP and all that, wasn't it?
Well, so they said, but it was like it was almost like the nearest thing to describe it to would be a sort of like a Western shamanic sort of canon that were underground but highly respected. They were seen as like the last vestige of Hermeticism and the old sort of what's the word? Egyptian, non-Babylonian canon of knowledge and mysticism. And they were very highly valued, but they were talked about in almost hushed tones, like, oh, aren't you incredible? Yeah. And everyone was afraid of them, including the power structure. Weishaupt basically said one day, hey, I'm the Illuminati, and took the legacy over. He infiltrated the Freemasonic groups, specifically the Grand Orient Lodge in Paris, with the objective of creating a republican movement throughout Europe, everywhere. And quite successfully that they were too. And there's even, in this book that I have, they were even talking about how the Freemasons within the Grand Orient Lodge didn't want the Illuminati, didn't want Weishaupt and the Illuminati anywhere near them because they knew that he had a sort of like a pernicious objective. He was sort of just like, the Bavarian Illuminati with a common purpose of the 18th century.
Does the book mention whether or not Weishaupt was a Jesuit?
Yes, he was. He was a Jesuit. He was actually born Jewish and he converted Catholic, and he was a Jesuit.
Yes, it is interesting how the Jesuits are supposedly sort of the hierarchy of the Vatican.
Yeah, the ones in power, the real ones and with the real power.
Yeah, no, the Jesuits are very powerful. If you look at, like, in Ireland here, all the top people, our kind of elite, they all went to Jesuit colleges.
Yeah,
exclusive ones.
The black and the red, sort of Catholic, yeah.
And they're taught like they're taught to speak in a different kind of language. Like James Joyce, the writer, he went to like Clongones, which is a very exclusive. Even though he came from a poor family, they recognized his genius at an early age. Clongoneswood College, which is a very exclusive Jesuit school here in Ireland, like the Irish version of what you guys call a public school, like a big posh school. And the education you get in these places is phenomenal, but it also includes the use of language and the Jesuitical language, Jesuitical phrasing and NLP, and that's why he was such a phenomenal writer. If you read his books like Finnegan's Wake or Ulysses, at first you think you're reading gobbledygook. What's happening is it's like a Wagner opera. You're giving a narrative on the surface, but underneath your subconscious is being programmed with a different story. That's very Jesuitical. And that's stuff. You see, this is the stuff we have to look into. We can't be just like, I know you guys.
That's the second time you've done that tonight to me, thank God.
I know you guys are not like this, but you look at the majority of as Psychic said, the truther movement, right? They've seen loads of videos where the music goes din 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 din, and they show like an all-seeing eye, a pyramid, a scene from The Matrix, and
2012 waves coming over the mountains.
Yeah, exactly. And Jordan Maxwell talking about the sun rising means this, that, and the other, and then dun dun dun, and then they have something about sacred geometry, and it's like, what the fuck are you on about? Give me
It's like children's programs on TV, isn't it?
Specific thing of what you're on about here. And they think they're experts on the Illuminati and like that. And I would say to everyone, look, go back and study for yourself. And the best way to study is books. And that's the way to do it. And the pre-internet stuff is much better. And then you will see that some of it is true, and a lot of it is just like bullshit. And that's what people really need to do with all this stuff. You know, like my work in the Psychopaths came out of my wanting to know what is a demon really, and then a whole world was opened up to me. Yeah. You know, I learned all about psychology and neuroplasticity, and you know, and all that stuff to do with the brain, as well as consciousness, through an exploration. And that's the beauty of taking a genuine and honest and flexible knowledge path, rather than saying, oh, I believe what this guy says because there's a Nine Inch Nails soundtrack on it and a picture of a pyramid.
I think also, if all you can do is, you know, people come up to you and say, this, that and the other, and then you just go, really? Right, I'm going to shout that really loudly to everybody I know. This, that and the other, this, that and the other. And then another person comes along and goes, oh no, that's wrong. This, that and the other. And then you start shouting that in another direction. If all you're doing every time information comes to you is just going out and being like an activist with that information, you're never actually processing what you're being told. You're just reacting to it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think
endless debunking. Oh, these people who they're obsessed with David Icke for a year, and then they saw one video that said he was a Jesuit, and then they instantly believe he's a Jesuit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, true or not, and then they're on the anti-Icke bandwagon, and then they're into Jordan Maxwell for a few years, and then they find out that Jordan they see a video, and then it goes on and on, you know.
Yeah.
And then it's like, look, the only thing what really is going on here is they're trying to look for someone to give them their knowledge as an excuse to never go on such path themselves. And
to process things themselves.
And it's not, it's about people not taking responsibility, really.
Exactly. And also being afraid of someone having an opinion different than yours. I love when people have to say to me, oh, you're wrong about psychopaths, let me talk about it. And, you know, I love the idea of interaction, exchanges, blah, blah, blah. It's great, it's healthy, and that's the way it should be. You know, so many of these so-called truthers, ultimately they're still looking for a belief package. That's why so many Christians, especially the American truthers, they're nearly all Christians. And they, you know, believe in this and that. Once it agrees with the Bible.
Yeah.
You know.
A few weeks ago we had the author of the Think book on the show, a man called Alan Eberdetto Green. And I really enjoyed the fact that he was saying that he doesn't agree with everything that all the different authors within the book talk about, all the different think authors talk about.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter. You know, you come up with your own conclusions for things. What's working for one person isn't working for you. And like you say, you know, one person might be enjoying, you know, what Freeman has to say. Another person might be enjoying what I don't know, what you have to say. And I don't know. Not that you're particularly a kind of sort of conspiracy or truth promulgator of information, but you know, it just you take what seems to resonate from you with Jordan Maxwell, and then you take that and move on to the next thing and see what resonates from that with you, so that you're constantly building on your own information and your own way of looking at the world.
Exactly, and that's the concept of my work as the emerging mythos. Like the first video I made in the series, I called it the dynamic conspiracy theorist versus the stagnant conformist. And my attitude was, it doesn't matter if you believed in the greatest load of crap in the conspiracy stuff, as long as you didn't get locked into it.
Yeah.
Like this thing, you know, once you're on that path, you're winning. It doesn't matter if you were into the UFO stuff and it didn't work out. It doesn't matter if you were into the 2012 stuff and 2013 comes along and nothing happens. None of those things matter. What matters is that you were actually on that journey, because the ultimate noetic truth the ultimate self-realization of your place in this reality and your exploration of this experience is the journey and not the destination. And that's what's wrong. And back to the left-right brain thing. The left brain is always looking for a destination. The right brain is always looking for meaning.
Yeah. I think that when I was aware that a lot of the environmental global warming information that I was following as a youngster was to lead me down a certain way of thinking, when I began to realise that was just like I say, to lead me in a certain way of thinking, that's what made me realise that, well, hold on a minute, if I, and I bought into a lot of that at a young age, and a lot of it is true, that there is a lot of pollution going on in the world, but most of it is coming from huge corporations and organisations.
And it's not carbon.
It's not carbon.
Real pollution.
Yeah,
it's real pollution.
That's real pollution. It's not carbon, and it's not produced by me farting or using my car. It's not. It's not because I remember there used to be this whole thing about, McDonald's is bad because they've got these vast fields where cows are, and because these cows fart all the time, it's making CO2, and so let's all hate McDonald's because their cows fart. And it's like, well, let's hate McDonald's for other reasons. Not because their cows produce CO2.
and we never encourage to hate the company who makes the fertilizer, who actually produces the grass in these fields, and they're the big chemical polluters of all. But we don't know them. They give us an easy target to focus on. That's very psychopathic as well. To give you the idea of taking your mind off the real issue and having it's called crazy making or gaslighting, where your sense of reality is changed, where you're worried about carbon you're exhaling carbon, where at the same time you're not paying attention to the heavy metals being poured into rivers by the people who are at these climate change, who are the companies which are owned by the people who are at these climate change summits.
Yes, yeah. Is that gaslighting a reference to the film Gaslight?
Yeah, that's it. That's a
that's good.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's psychology.
The woman was made to think she was going mad by her husband.
Yeah, that's actually entered into that's now a meme in psychology now, and has been for a long time. It's what a psychopath will alter your sense of reality by making you think black is white and white is black, just like in the movie. And that's what that's what a psychopath does in a personal relationship. But they do it to us in the system as well. Like they will have us. The people flying in private jets to the climate change summit will tell the rest of the can't fly. And you're like, or also these studies that appear every week. 1 week meat will give you cancer, and the next week meat will give you a good brain. 1 week the computer, the internet is deadly. The next week is the best thing that's ever happened. And it's constantly
1 minute alcohol will kill you. The next minute red wine is good for you.
It's to make you dependent upon the system, so you don't think for yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You give up after a while and saying, I don't know what to believe anymore. Just tell me what I have to do.
Yeah.
That's what gaslighting is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want us back to the churches, don't they? They want us back to religion, because that was the ultimate control.
But they want the one religion, don't they? Which is,
I remember, like, I was very atheistic for years. My atheism was a direct revulsion to my religion, having to do with religion. And then I realized, well, how is that actually being better? All I'm really doing is being sort of like the anti-religion. I'm not actually learning anything here, and I'm not learning from this experience. And now I can understand why people are atheistic, but I can also understand why people have, like, that's a great example there. Richard Dawkins. Here's how he gaslights us. On one hand, he says there's religion, and on the other hand, he says there's atheism. And atheism is the rational choice. But what about the middle ground of spirituality?
Yeah,
They're always giving us two extremes to argue for, rather than seeing. You see, it's the space between words. It's the silent pause between speech is where the truth always lies.
Yeah.
And they never want us looking there.
I know, it's funny because I always kind of see myself as someone who, well, I don't want to say believes in God, but has like a spiritual side and will look at that kind of side. But I'm not religious, and there's no box for that kind of thought. You're either religious, and especially in schools, you know, the way they teach in schools, you're either religious and you fall into that, or you're an atheist and you don't believe in it, and you know, you fall into the communism side of things. There's no space for just being a human being who has a spiritual nature.
And we're supposed to be a secular country. Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's also the notion that we're not allowed to say, I don't know. There's a beauty in saying, what's the answer? I don't know. But that allows you to start exploring, but they don't want us to explore. Yeah. You have to pick one or the other.
Well, it's getting back to learning from your experiences and learning from your mistakes, rather.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you think, like, you just think of these moments in your life, like when you're in a band and you're playing music. You don't sit down and write this incredible thing that comes out of nowhere. It just happens. When you're a man and a woman meet and they're sort of like, they're having a conversation and suddenly there's that attraction. They don't sit down and they say, let's become a couple, fall in love. And, it happens in that space, in that area, in that gap between the words, between the sentences. It happens on that intuitive level. And that's what makes us so amazing as human beings. And that's what makes us so different from the psychopaths and the psychopathic system. And the psychopath doesn't work that way. They're devious, they're manipulative, they plan, they're specific in their objective. They don't understand the idea of spontaneity, intuition, and creative flow and flux. But that's how we live our lives. And that's the psychopathic control system at the top does not want us having a world where, like I said about the right brain earlier on, where spontaneity is a key factor. Now we need both. We need our left and our right brains. We need both equally, and they're both things together is actually what expands our consciousness. And they don't want that to happen.
That's it. I mean, at the moment, everything is heavily left brain, and of course the reaction to that will be to go heavily right brain. But like you say, that's not the right way. And I mean, I was reading somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but that those who were renowned, I think it was, I was reading something about the ancient tribal systems, and that those who were the most renowned within the tribe were those who had the perfect balance of left and right brain. And it was I've been looking into a lot deeper into divination and ley lines and things, and that was it. It was talking about the so-called, well, not so-called, but the people who had the knowledge of the land, of the lay of the land, and could divine the land, and see where which direction the lines were going and the energies and how they were working. These were the people who had the perfect left-right brain working. And so it is a process that we need to develop both sides. We can't just say, right, well, it's all bad to have to be planning and have language, or it's all bad just to be an artist who's so out there that he can't even make his own food. These are the two kind of extremes of things. You have to be able to function and look after yourself in the world, but you have to be able to express yourself in the world too, and to be in tune with what's going on. And these were the people who had the knowledge and were able to bring that knowledge to the people. So obviously they were quite respected within their communities.
Yeah. No, it's true. If I was to put a tag on what, my work is, I'd have to say it's natural philosophy. Natural philosophy was what science was before science became a discipline. Up until the 1850s, the term science used to mean someone who acquired knowledge. A scientist was not a profession or a discipline. It wasn't until Descartes and then later Darwin came along that the idea of a scientist being a profession who works in this reductionist reductionist method of measuring, quantifying, and examining results came along. Prior to that, the whole concept of natural philosophy was that we do have a reductionist notion that we do measure, quantify, weigh, and test things. That's great. However, there are unseen forces that impact upon this from outside the five-sense reality, what we would call quantum physics today, but it also manifests through things like art, intuition, psychology. And that's what's developing the left-right brain. That's where you got to get back to. That's where we have to head towards. We have to, get back on this path through less specialization has been a phenomenal thing for the Babylon system. That's allowed them to divide everyone up into fields where they only know about their own specific specialized field.
Yeah, exactly. There's no crossover.
The different disciplines don't talk to each other, and this is all about maintaining control. Yeah,
exactly. Compartmentalization, isn't it?
Beautiful. That's exactly the word. Compartmentalization.
I can hardly say it.
I know, but it hits the nail on the head. That's just what it is. Everyone has their own little box where they do their own little thing, and it's safe, secure, and smug that they're the best at what they do. But the reality is, they're a bat flying around in the dark with a tiny little flashlight that shows them a little bit of light.
It's a bit like Brazil. Have you seen the film Brazil?
Oh, years and years ago.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. Everyone's got their own little box.
A good film that shows that whole idea is Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. Specifically the scene after the astronauts have woken up from their sort of induced coma, from their sleep, and they're starting to get their system back together again. But Dave, the astronaut, starts doing sketching. He starts sketching like an artist inside the spaceship, and HAL 2000, the techno-psychopathic robot that runs the ship, takes a specific interest in the fact that Dave is actually sketching and developing his right brain, because he knows that Dave is the one who is a threat to his psychopathic agenda to take over the ship.
What are you doing, Dave?
Yeah. And when he says, "Can you show me the sketch?" Oh, that's very good. If you want to know about a psychopathic brain, that film is the classic insight. That HAL 2000 computer is spot on.
Yeah.
That's exactly how a psychopath thinks and acts.
Have you ever seen Jay Wilder's film Kubrick's Odyssey?
No.
Oh, that's a really good. He sort of goes into how perhaps that Kubrick maybe was instrumental in faking the moon landings, and that both things were sort of happening at the same time.
That's true, yeah. And also Kubrick sent the rushes of 2001 to the sort of the US Space Agency at the time, not NASA, but the military version of it, and they were blown away by how good his film was. I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah, it is interesting. That stuff is Kubrick definitely was a very interesting man. He definitely had a sort of he was well grounded in that sort of esoteric knowledge.
Yeah, and after
the opening scenes of 2001, that's like that's a homage to the sort of mystery school tradition. It's clear as day, that is.
Yeah. I don't know whether it was in Jay Wilder's thing, but I've seen something else where it's sort of saying that that the monolith is a similar proportion to a cinema screen, and that the monolith was the cinema screen, so it was almost like it was feeding back within itself. It was becoming self-aware that it was in a film. Quite an interesting take, I thought.
Yeah, I saw the film like last year for the first time on the big screen, and it's even more amazing on the big screen.
Yeah,
I've always wanted to see it on the big screen. I could only imagine the impact that had on people in the 60s. I think that the monolith, from the way I read it, it just meant nothingness, and within there, that's where the development is found, outside the system, outside the outside the sort of dogma, outside the sort of paradigm of the not only the control system but the natural order of things is where evolution is found, because it's that pregnant pause within the sort of consciousness that develops where, insight develops. Because you remember at the scene at the beginning when they first see it, the monkeys or the early proto-humans see the monolith. It was the observation of that actually allowed them to develop and jump their frontal cortex, as I said again, develop tools, eat meat, which also helped develop their brain, and win the water hole back from the other group of proto-humans.
Oops.
Fabulous film.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, Kubrick. I think every film that Kubrick's done is amazing in its own uniqueness.
Even the early ones like Path to Glory, a phenomenal film.
Yeah.
I think that wasn't it The Shining that he is supposed to have encoded the secrets of the how he filmed the moon landing.
Yeah.
No, I never knew that. The Shining is great too as well. Wow, I never knew that. Yeah.
He sort of went off Stephen King's book, isn't he?
Yeah, it's nothing like the book, the actual film. The film's actually better.
Yeah.
But that's almost like the Labyrinth of the Psychopath too as well when you think about it. Because even at the end of the film, Jack Nicholson is actually dies. He freezes to death inside the maze, inside the ground stuff. So it's just so brilliant. Even the way, I mean, that's truly one of the most frightening films ever made. Even though a lot doesn't happen in it, but you just think of the idea of being in a vast hotel, a family on their own, up in the Rocky Mountains in the depths of winter, and someone help.
Yeah.
Your consciousness alone would be shifted by that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, I worked in this building in Dublin. I've got a good story for you. When I was a teenager, when I was in college in Dublin, I was at 18. I was actually just about to drop out of college, and I was working nighttime in this a fairly modern building. It was built in the late 60s. It was a big tennis club, big sports club, and it had bars and restaurants, and it was like a private members club. And I was like a dishwasher. I was just a kid there at the time, 17, 18, and that was just my part-time job. And at night, I would always be like one of the last people to leave because you'd be end of the night, have to clean everything up. And so the night watchman used to give me the code to punch in the alarm to get out the door at the end. I used to have to take this long walk on this corridor, and it used to terrify the hell out of me. I used to be very frightened. It was always the only thing that was on it was the night safety lights, and I used to go down there and just very frightened. And when I ran out of the building, I'd literally run out in terror, get on my bicycle and cycle home.
Yeah.
One of the waitresses that worked there, I recently connected with her on Facebook, and she's we haven't talked to each other in 25 years or something. And I said to her, do you remember the place we used to work? The one we used to work that night. And I said, did you ever get the feeling it was haunted? And she says, I can't believe you just told me that. And then she said, the long corridor behind the restaurant.
Yeah.
And I says, yes. And she says, one night I was walking through there, and I used to get that feeling too. And I looked around and saw a little deformed man in the corner with a big head, and he was staring right at me. And then I said, well, in the same spot was because I remember it very clear, it was a public telephone back then. It was in that spot that people could use to call for taxis. And I said, I was afraid to ever go near that spot. Well, I found a really old map of Dublin, and it discovered that the tennis club had been built upon an old building that was used for people that had massive deformities, big heads, and they were shunned in society. You know, that kind of a thing, like what they call freaks today, or back in the day, like they would, gigantism and stuff like that. And that's where that building was located. So somehow the energy of that place had retained itself into that club, which just goes to show you. And I remember when I first watched The Shining, I was thinking, that would hit me. I says, oh my God, I used to remember walking down those corridors late at night on my own in this vast complex. The idea of being stuck in there just changes your consciousness. That film was phenomenal.
Yeah, amazing film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to get the fear of this big walk-in fridge that I used to work in a hotel in my hometown. Similar to what you were doing, washing dishes sort of thing.
Yeah, you wonder what if it was the energy of the dead meat or something in there, or something happened. But another one is too. I can remember I used to get a train when I lived in New York. I used to have to get up real early in the morning to travel a long distance to the local. And the train station, the first train that came in about 5, and then I used to be the only person waiting on the train coming in at 5. The first train at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd also be the only one standing in nighttime in the station. And the same effect happened again. I felt this shift in consciousness. So it's the same thing you described in that walk-in fridge. Like, I didn't see anything, but I felt it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then your imagination runs away with stuff. And that comes from our primal instincts when our ancestors were huddled in caves, with a fire in front of them. Predators, the wild animals outside, like a saber-toothed tiger, growling. And that's where the demons in the shadow came from. The demons,
It's funny you say that, though, because I only sort of recognised the feeling once I'd seen The Shining, and it sort of reverted, because the feeling I had in the walk-in fridge was prior to seeing the film, sort of thing. When that scene where he's locked in there, that kind of brought, I think that was the fear I was having, that I was going to get locked in there, because you couldn't actually open it from the inside. Like a real fridge sort of thing,
That would freak me out. Yeah.
But the dead meat thing's an interesting thing, the spirit that's sort of contained in that. There used to be hanging carcasses in there.
Yeah, a friend of mine just opened a health food shop in a town nearby, and they had to get the place. I don't know, she's a Buddhist, I don't know, I'm into that stuff. But anyway, they felt they had to get the place sort of like cleaned of the energy, because it was a slaughterhouse originally on the site. Could you excuse me for a second, guys? I'll let you talk. I just have to go do something. I'll be back in a minute or two.
Okay, yeah. Well, we've got sort of 15 minutes left, and...
Have you seen that Kubrick thing about The Shining, Nick?
Yeah, I've got it. It's on the Dropbox.
Oh, right, yeah. It's quite interesting, isn't it? He talks about... Because I know that he's talking about the moon landings. I can't remember all of it. It's a long time since I last looked at it.
But
it was something about...
the kid...
Like he opens the door and he's got the rocket on his shirt, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he's playing his cars on the octagonal or hexagonal shaped carpet, and that's sort of almost like the landing site or the takeoff, Cape Canaveral or wherever these went off from. And
what's your thoughts, John? You're back on for a minute.
Hello, John.
He's not listening.
Oh.
He's back.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, John.
Sorry, I didn't have my headset on for a while. You're watching all your funny smileys on text message. Yeah, I've seen Jay Widener's film about Kubrick and The Shining. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, I noticed all the points that you had about the rocket on the T-shirt and the hexagonal flooring. I think that was meant to mimic the sort of the boosters on the Saturn V rocket, wasn't it? Where they fired the flames come out, that sort of hexagonal shape. Could be.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's worth a look.
Yeah. Jay Widener was just on a Project Camelot thing this week with some other guy talking about
Eric Cassidy, wasn't it? Yeah, I heard that.
I sort of fell asleep watching it last night. Bless her, Kerry, she's got the same mannerisms. She sort of comes out with the same thing every time. Is that Thomas back?
Yeah, I'm here.
We're back, yeah.
Cool. So, yeah, we've got like 12 minutes left of the podcast.
Yeah, we haven't got too much longer.
Yeah. So, we'll maybe wrap. So, have you got anything that you would like to promote
When's your new book out, Thomas?
Yeah, I have a few things I've got lined up. I just released a film, actually. Well, I haven't, but iCanPlanet.com have released a film, which I'm star of. It features my work in it. It's called Breaking the Babylon Mind, and it's all about how to restore the left-right balance, change neuroplasticity, and also how what we were talking about earlier on. And it's a very, very beautiful film produced by Steve King. And the idea is that it's
Stephen King.
Isn't that funny? No, I know it's funny, isn't it? But
didn't he write The Shining?
But that's called Breaking the Babylon Mind. You can get the DVD at iCanPlanet.com. My next book, Defeat the Demons, is still going back and forth with publishers, but hopefully within a month it'll be released and out there. It's Puzzling People Part 2 with, as I said, I'll be going very deeply into subjects like the destruction of the feminine. I have a chapter in there called Hell Spells. It's basically how women have been attacked by the control system to dehumanize them, to drive them away from their more natural and more sort of beautiful and graceful states towards the transhumanist Botox ready, consumer that they want them to be. And
does that go back to the 50s CIA program of feminism then?
Yeah, they'll talk about Gloria Steinem and stuff like that, but also I'll go much deeper into things like, Sex and the City, and how shows like that are basically to destroy women and not to empower them as they claim. Yeah, they're also conduits for the promotion of pedophilia, as the psychopaths in power are trying to sexualize children younger and younger.
Oh God!
And it'll also have a lot more things on brain exercises and basically recovery from trauma and emotional abuse. So it'll be Puzzling People Part 2, and then the next month I have the tour of England. So yeah, I got plenty lined up.
Thomas,
we'll recommend that book to next week's guest for you then.
Yeah.
Because Jason Walker has been through the mill.
Yeah, he grew up in an Illuminati family, satanic ritual abuse.
Yeah, he was handed over basically to.
A bit like Macaulay Culkin,
Oh, that's horrible.
And it's a real shame that we never had Kyle on with us for the whole show, because he's just got loads of great stuff about this.
Thomas, have you seen Hollywood Mind Control? Freeman and Jamie's thing with Wash Your Brain?
No.
There's both parts are now out, so there's like maybe about 3 hours worth of stuff. All going into like Disney and how they're programming like cartoons and things like that. Sexualizing cartoons, like you were saying before, killing the mother off.
Oh yeah, that's a big deal. And Disney has been a paedophile factory from day one.
Yeah.
Even before they got the cartoons, they had a series of films about a little girl. She was sort of like a Shirley Temple type. And in so many films, she's stroking her crotch around grown men and things like that. Totally sick.
And it's not just that they kill the mothers off as well. They kind of put these evil older women in place as well, like the evil, the evil witch,
the stepmother.
Yeah, and she's always an older woman who's jealous of the younger woman.
She's post-menopause.
And there's absolutely no kind of. There's never any promotion of the fact that as you get older you get wiser, and that the grandmother holds the wisdom, and that this can be passed down through the generations, and there's never any acceptance or kind of value given to the wisdom of women as they get older.
I covered that in my next book, including comments of mothers who had to wean their daughters off Disney because their daughters were saying things like, well, they were being run by the princess programming, and their daughters would say things like, I hate ugly and old people. Yeah. Because they want to believe that like the only future for them is to find a man who's the prince who'll come along and rescue them.
Yeah.
Oh, Disney is the sickest and most evil thing that's ever been perpetrated upon
once they get past 30, they're all going to have nervous breakdowns because they're all going to start getting saggy and old, and
And then they go for
They're all going to have to go. I mean, kids are already looking at, so you see some things where kids are having plastic surgery in their teens. So, Jesus Christ, what hope has natural beauty got?
Or even things like crotchless panties for preteens. You hear about this?
Yeah. Really?
Oh, read my book.
Jeez.
There's actually crotchless panties for preteen girls.
I know.
That's how sick it's become.
Yeah.
Or sex dolls that called Frigid Farah, who she has a program inside her that if she refuses sex, and you must rape her then. Rape dolls. That's what a sex doll is now. A sex doll now is a rape doll.
Fucking hell.
What?
But this is what you mean, like for men to use as
the sex dolls.
sexual things.
Blow up dolls, thanks to the transhumanist.
Right.
Yeah, it all ties into the transhumanist thing. In Puzzling People, I have a good section about that. That there's a thing called Real Doll. It's a company that makes lifelike sex dolls for men, and some of these men actually fall in love with them and marry them. But there's one model called Frigid Farah, and her program is that you rape her because she refuses, and she likes it. And that's a psychopathic control grid. See, their idea of sexuality is purely a power and control thing. They don't understand the notion of making love.
Yeah.
This is why everything today is these vampire shows where it's like vicious, bloody sex.
Mm-hmm.
And also, this is also demonizing the whole kind of sexual process and the whole spiritual pleasure of sex and the spiritual connection that you get with sex as well.
Psychopaths don't have that. Yeah, because psychopaths don't have that. Although psychopaths are constantly having sex, they don't enjoy sex for the same reason a normal person does. There's no sense of bonding and lovemaking, of reaching those higher states of sort of connectivity. It's purely about control. And if you see the media, their idea of sex, it's always about control, because it's reflecting the neuroses of the psychopathic controllers who are in TV and movies.
Yeah.
Is that why they're all wankers? Because they can all control them. They can only control themselves.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there's actually a lot of truth to that. There's no difference. A sex to a psychopath is just a codependence. It's codependent masturbation. You understand what I'm saying? The other person is just to get them off. They're not a partner. There's no intertwining there. It's purely, a psychopathic male having sex with another person. Their orifice is just a replacement for their hand. So you're actually right on the money there.
That is what I mean, actually.
Oh, okay. You meant wankers in the metaphorical sense.
Yeah, I suppose both sort of thing, but I kind of meant that because they don't really, if they're not having sex for love sort of thing, then they are having sex for themselves, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's just ultimately what their ultimate partner is themselves. That's why when the psychopath first targets you in a relationship, what they do is they mimic everything you want and everything that's missing in your life, everything that you've ever wanted, and you basically fall in love with yourself. This is why when a psychopathic relationship ends, the other person, the non-psychopathic person, the target, is so damaged because their sense of self has been completely removed and replaced with a doppelganger of the psychopaths. Read my book, Puzzling People. I really like it. I'll come along to the gig in Brighton.
Oh no, we're there, dude. We're there.
Yeah, I'll give you an education. Yeah.
We're not asking for guestless passes.
Honest. How much is it, by the way?
$5.
I think they're charging $6. I think their promoters are charging $6 in.
No, we know. Well, we know of the lady who's putting them on. We don't know her personally, but we know she put on Ian Crane recently, didn't she?
Yeah, that's the same woman, Sarah James.
Yeah, Sarah, that's it. Yeah, and it's the Brian Holmes Centre, isn't it? Bright Helm, yeah.
Did you go to the Ian Crane thing?
We didn't, because we only heard about it. It wasn't very well publicised. But I
wasn't around that night.
Your talks have been a bit better. Word of mouth, I've heard of it anyway, sort of thing. somebody told me about it last week, and I said,
you talk anyway.
yeah. Well, somebody about it told me last week, and I said, oh God, he's coming on our radio show. They're going, you've got a radio show?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's this is a great organic sort of growing thing that's coming along, and we will definitely be along.
Is there much of a scene down in Brighton that direction?
Well,
Depends what scene you're on about.
it's kind of people are starting to show themselves out of the woodwork these days. You know, like you were saying earlier about the internet being, you know, suddenly there's a forum for people who think the thoughts that we're all thinking sort of thing. Well, slowly but surely we're meeting a lot of people who look at these same websites and who have always had these same sort of thoughts and feelings.
Yeah,
sort of
there are sort of different, I wouldn't say different groups, but there seems to be,
there's definitely a similar...
people who...
These like-minded people.
Yeah, like-minded people who have just been doing things individually.
I was trying not to use that phrase, Nick, but
and I think, we cross over in certain ways, but we're not all a big group.
Well, it's getting back to what you were saying earlier. I was going to try and add into that. There's definitely a quickening happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where the sort of knowledge is sort of snowballing, and more people with our feelings and thoughts are sort of bumping into each other more synchronistically than we would have done in, you know, a couple of years ago, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, hearing, I mean, my wife, By Chick's been... she didn't make me listen to your show on Red Ice, but she said, listen to this guy, he's amazing, sort of thing. And then recently you've got in touch, sort of thing, and here you are talking to us now, sort of thing. And funnily enough, somebody, you know, within the last few sort of days has mentioned that you're coming here. So it's all very synchronistic and very organic and beautiful.
Yeah, I think I've been in touch with you before.
We've got 8 seconds, 5. So,
how many seconds we got?
Yeah, well, bye everybody on the
about to end.
blog talk. So.